They do that to rookies. They do that to rookies. They make you work harder.
My dad told me to be attached.
Well, see, if that was your dad, he demanded that we postpone this until this thing is done right.
He's still calling me asking procedural questions.
I saw him yesterday.
Well, oh, well, lovely. Okay,
Can I get one more?
yeah, please. All right.
Hey, you got the floor, Mayor.
Okay, we'll call the meeting of the City Council special meeting or workshop to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Johnston,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Francina. Here. Councilmember Blatz.
Here.
Councilmember Haney,
Here?
Councilmember Wyrick.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. Okay, where's the agenda?
Anybody else need a
Do I have
map?
the agenda?
There's 3 extras.
Somebody will want them. Scan it and we can
Or is this
electronically
gonna
shoot
be,
it.
is this gonna be put on the television set too?
Yeah, video, we're airing it, we just don't have all the camera angles.
Right. So you'll have to turn and give them your best profile, Randy. Okay, this is a workshop to deal with the capital improvements portion of the budget, and depending on the amount of time and the council's interest, we can go back and talk about the budget in its totality. If this meeting satisfies all of the questions and give the direction to the council, then the next time we get together will be for the public hearing, after which the council will make whatever adjustments to the budget and adopt it. But if the council feels that they still need further workshops, then I guess we'll have to figure out what time that will be. So, Mr. City Manager, would you like to kick this off?
Now, while he's moving, may I ask, when you're making a presentation, you want to do the whole presentation before questions again?
Yeah, my presentation's gonna be very brief and high level, and then Greg's gonna get more into it, so, I think you'll probably have questions.
Right, and you want those during presentation or after conclusion?
I think by section would be good. You
Okay.
know, every time we go through something
All right.
like paving or
Okay.
streets,
Oh,
whatever.
that makes sense, good.
So I just wanna kinda kick it off with just a very brief, presentation, just kind of, again, kind of like last week, kind of tell you about where we're at, currently. So, obviously tonight we're going to talk about the capital improvement program budget, and, Mr. Grant's gonna provide some detail on specific projects planned for this year. As noted at last week's workshop, the city has budgeted a general fund transfer of $682,000 from the TOT, the 20% of the TOT to the CIP. For those watching at home, TOT is changing occupancy tax. So just a quick high-level overview. We're showing fiscal year 18-19's proposed revenues versus our revenues versus fiscal year 19-20's proposed revenues. The interesting thing about this year versus last year, you can see that we're proposing about the same amount of the TOT transfer, which is the green, let's see if I can get this to work, the green bar. You'll see it was $682,000 proposed this year, and last year it was $669,000. But we're able to leverage other sources to really push up funding this year. We have $964,000 in grants, the big chunk being the $490,000 from ATP, and then we're also-
430 for the demonstration.
Yeah, oh, 430,000 from the demonstration project, and then we also are trying to leverage some donations as well.
Is that Civic Association?
Yes, that's a project we're working on.
And the big increase in transfers is also the ATP?
It's mostly the road project.
Oh, because it's a 2-year program. Yeah, okay, got it.
So, at the end result is that this year, and exactly what you were just saying is, we're doing the program where every other year we have a lot of street paving, so this year it jumps from 1.1 million last year total to $3 million this year total.
So normally it probably is less than double, and then this year it's almost triple, right?
Yeah, it's almost triple, I think, because of the ATP and the demonstration project. projects, those were big jumps in the grants.
Okay. I'm sorry, are we waiting or are we asking questions, Mayor?
You can go.
Just, is that the,
Yeah, just going back.
so the blue columns are the totals of the green, orange, pink, or beige, and yellow, correct?
Right.
And that's all CIP and equipment, grand total.
This is not the equipment, correct?
That's correct. This is only the CIP.
CIP grand total,
Yeah.
except equipment, okay.
Yes.
And then the column on the left, the 3 million, that's the revenues that are coming in.
That's this year's total, proposed revenues, yes, the 3 million.
Okay.
And, so this is kind of the flip side of that. That was revenues, this is expenditures. So again, just kind of showing that this year is the year that we're doing all the street paving and those types of projects. So it's, this, like I said, we alternate where we kind of have a down year and an up year. So last year was about $1 million in CIP funding. This year's gonna be about $3 million in CIP, expenditures. And, we're showing the percentage in green is Fund 31, city funds, and in orange is from other sources. So again, this kind of just reiterates that this year, we're really trying to leverage funds using other grants and donations. With that, I will hand off to Mr. Grant to give some detail on what those projects, the $3 million worth of projects are this year.
So what that is showing us is that this current fiscal year, where 50% of the money into the capital funds is ours, the green, and it's a little less than a third of the money in the coming year, showing quite a bit of leverage as far as getting other sources,
Right.
but atypical of what we normally do, right? So and that is affected by the new project out on the highway. So it's not a big increase in the routine maintenance.
Right.
Is that correct?
Well, typically in the year we do the paving, we bring in gas tax money, we're bringing AB 939 money in, we're bringing other types of deferred revenue in, so it's not just new stuff that we're getting, it's stuff that we normally would get, but it's in that off year. So we don't bring those into Fund 31 until, so like we accumulate gas tax money for 2 years and then we
Okay.
transfer it in. So that's part of that, a big
Right.
piece of it.
Right, but what we're looking at there is not a big jump in routine maintenance.
That's correct.
Okay, right, I just wanted, on behalf of Public Works, so
And-
everybody
and
knows
the-
Thank you for pointing
their
that out.
challenge.
Also, is it the AB1, that's the,
SB1.
SB1, I'm sorry. That's matching funds too, right? So we're
That
taking.
was straight, they don't require matching, but they.
That's a straight grant.
That's just, so why did I was under the impression that each year they gave us the equivalent of what we were putting in as a city.
No.
Into our overlay, so they haven't.
Yeah.
It's a straight grant.
That one is, it's the gas tax we used to have, and then they supplemented the gas tax with a little bit of a DMV registration.
It's just formula on city size, right?
So it does come in on a regular basis, and it's, allocated in a special fund, and then we bring it into Fund 31 as needed.
And how long do you, Greg, how long do you sense that we're gonna have that funding?
I think that's pretty well, SB1, I don't think they had a termination date on that, right? Yeah,
And you said that gets transferred into Fund 31?
as needed.
So when we look at the Fund 31 money, it includes that SB1 money?
Right.
Okay.
So these other funds that are shown, other sources, the left side is really TOT, the green. The orange would be everything else, which would be AB 939, the gas tax, the if we get special grants or otherwise, ATP grant, or hopefully Ojai Civic Association is willing to work with us on a few of these projects as well.
And then the funding that Bill was referring to, is it SB what?
SB1.
The SB one, is that roughly what, 200,000 or what?
Well, the total gas tax is close to 300,000, and the supplement from the SB1 wasn't as high as everybody thought it would be, but it's close to 100 grand per year, maybe more.
So that's part of the 300?
Yes.
At
Yeah,
100 a year?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so, okay.
But to reiterate that point this is not maintenance, these are actual projects, and Greg's gonna go through detail on them, but this year, we're, kind of expecting to do a lot of projects.
I w-
I'll hand it over to you, Greg.
All right, thank you. And I was hoping, yeah, if we go through each section, like roads, parks, complete streets and so on, if we could do questions at the end, it might
Each
answer.
section?
Yeah, each section.
Each section, okay.
That way you might be asking about, hey, what about that complete street project? You might see it's already in there. Appreciate
yeah.
that. And just as I mentioned too, sometimes we forget we are making good headway. I think since this TOT approach started in 2012, which has already been, this is our 7th year of allocating 20%, what's that approach, $600,000 per year. We've completed a lot of substantial projects. I think one of them, to be somewhat proud of it, would be the paving projects. You know, we used to have an average before we began that of spending about $80,000 per year to keep our, I think most, practically any city or county agrees that's the most substantial investment any city has is your streets, you know, the right of way and the paving that's gone in there. So we used to spend $80,000 average per year. Since we began this set aside in 2011, we're spending close to $600,000 per year average. So that is trending, where we had a definite downward trend of our pavement condition index. It's now trending upwards slightly. It's at least we're maintaining and moving up slightly. I think James had talked about this maybe in the last budget meeting, is we're on a 29-year cycle right now with overlays at the rate we're placing them. So these overlays do well for 10 to 15 years, depending on a lot of factors. But 30 years is a long time, and that's actually where the trend that we're on right now at this point. So we are doing worse first, so you'll see a lot of the beat-up streets are getting fixed up, and we're really helping out our maintenance crew that was used to chase around a lot of these pothole repairs and so on. And I think in general you'll see a trend that's improving, and that's what that map shows is our kind of the recent trend since we did this set-aside. You can see all these colors indicate a lot of streets being repaired.
Greg, in terms of this map, there are some streets that are not city responsibility on this map, right? Like the Termine Lane, that's
Right.
private. Crotona is private.
Right.
Quail Oaks is private. Is Persimmon Hill private?
Yes.
So those are pretty big chunks of, on this map in terms of visualizing what remains to be done. Are there any other ones besides Persimmon Hill, Quail Oaks, Termina Lane, and Crotona that are not city responsibility?
City, state highways.
Well, the state highway.
Yeah, state
Right.
highways as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying visually, if you take all that out, it looks better.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we could do something like that, shade them or otherwise, and
Just
put
curious.
a footnote on there.
Just in terms of a visual presentation,
Right.
that those are not city responsibility.
I have a question. When you do the street paving, is it practical to do striping at the same time, or does that matter?
We always do. Whenever there's an overlay placed, we do thermoplastic, which is intended to last 10 years. It still gets dirty, but it's a long-term plastic striping versus the paint striping.
Okay, a couple of questions on that. I was told today by a Park Road resident that the city widened Park Road at some point. Is that true? Another city council voted for it, or do you know anything about that?
I'm not aware, do you know where they were even talking?
I don't know if it's true, just asking.
Yeah, I mean, Park Road, most of our streets are standard curb-to-curb width of 40 foot was an
Okay,
old
so I'll
standard.
question her.
Yeah, and so I'm not aware of that wider street beyond
Yeah,
40 foot.
If there are some streets that are really wide, can we do striping if there's no sidewalks? Can you do anything without some council approval if it's just standard
Yeah.
striping?
Mhm.
Okay, and then next question is, because, my goal is ultimately to see the Complete Streets Committee goal is to do some kind of striping on Grand Avenue, and I don't know what all can be done legally without going through, a public process. But one thing that I kept seeing is when I took the kids to school last week, how few cars there were parked actually during that time, but those few cars are enough to cause a terrible accident, because then the kids have to go around. So I don't know if this is too off topic, but can a sign be put up, no parking between 7:30, 8:30? Or that's something that we maybe put on the agenda to discuss?
You know, the Complete Streets Master Plan that was adopted a couple of years ago now,
Yeah.
that's got options laid out for what can be done in Grand Avenue. So any of those are obviously impacts to people on Grand Avenue. And so if council gives direction on an approach for that, it certainly would help a lot. If we get into the various options that are available, it goes from minimal cost to the signage like you're talking about to
Uh-huh.
minor improvements on the south side of the curb. You know, we've got that extra wide right-of-way, and we have existing money that could improve that right-of-way, put better DG in as needed and clear the path so it could be used. But some people talk about moving the curb out and actually creating enough room for designated bike lanes, and that's very expensive doing something like
Okay.
that.
I don't want to cut into Sousa's Q&A, but that striping is down on Complete Streets. It's down on Complete Streets where you'll have an opportunity to talk about that.
Oh, it's
Can we
down,
stick-
on-
Yeah, can we stick to what we're talking about now?
yeah, I was just wondering about the finances of, I mean, the logistics, yeah. Thank
Mhm.
you. Sorry if I got too into it. Thank you.
So to try to recap, I guess we were talking about recent accomplishments in streets. We've really increased the amount of money being allocated. That's where the primary money goes, is with streets. So whenever we add a project to CIP, it's only a fixed amount of money going there. So it pulls back on paving. It's good to emphasize that as well. But we are making progress. On Complete Streets, we've recently completed the Whispering Oaks pedestrian crosswalks, and we've got these 7 improvements underway, 3 of them on Ojai Avenue, and 4 on Maricopa. And those are 90+% done. We're waiting for the poles so we can put up the flashing beacons on these special poles.
Those are fiscal 18, 19.
Those are 1920. They're almost, I'm sorry, 1819, yes.
Yeah, I was going to
Greg, are
say.
you reading off of another sheet?
Right.
I'm reading off a
1819.
cheat sheet I have for accomplishments.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so if we're trying to follow you, how do we do that?
I'm just going verbal.
Okay. So everything.
Yep. All right, so we have 7 flashing beacon crossings improvements. We have the bike trail crossing improvements. We put in curb extensions at Country Club, Bristol, Blanche, Ventura, Montgomery, and Bryant recently. We have curb extensions on Bristol Road, on Blanche at Matilaha, Blanche at Oak, Blanche at Topo were recently just done. We have a sidewalk infill that was just placed on Blanche from the Bank of America all the way down to
Okay,
Help.
now this is what's been done, right?
These were just completed.
Yeah, this is
So it's a
current
reminder-
fiscal year.
Okay, well, so,
Current fiscal year.
going along with what Randy is saying, let's try to keep it initially to what is being proposed for next year, and then if there are any questions later, or a report even to council on Tuesday night as to the accomplishments, that would be.
Okay.
If that works for
Sure.
you, it would be helpful.
Okay, on that note, I will move ahead to the cover page on the detailed capital improvement program. And that summary schedule, the 8.5 by 11 sheet, is informative. There's a third column over is projected 1920 that we're focused on here. At the top half is revenues coming in, so it's what we're talking about for a bit here. The TOT at 6.
I'm sorry, Greg, what page are you on?
That's
Is this
the one
attachment A, one?
Mhm.
Page one?
105.
Attachment A
One of the 8
105.
by, half
I
by
went
11.
through- Yeah, I went through these earlier today, so I may be out of order. It's
Okay,
like-
it's the
5 to
third,
6.
no, it's on the third sheet of the memo, the,
We're looking at
Yeah,
this,
that-
right?
Yeah, we're looking at this. CIP summary schedule, fiscal years 2017
So
to
attachment B,
2023.
page 1 of 6.
That's the second, that's
105.
attachment B, so we want the attachment B version.
I only have stuff there.
This is getting really interesting.
it's this one.
I only have one page. There you
Yeah,
go.
well, that's just the- this is the summary, yeah.
We're like, we're not well-trained pets.
All right. So attachment A, 1 of 5,
Correct.
The rest are.
That's where we are.
goes to attachment A, this sheet here, correct?
And then it goes to 11 by 17s, that's right, afterwards.
All right, thank you, Greg.
All right. So attachment A is informative in that it shows for the top half of this spreadsheet the revenues. So if you go to the third column over, it says projected 1920, and it shows our starting balance at 142,000 in Fund 31. So that's
Inclusive of the SB1.
it's everything.
Okay.
And then you can see the revenues anticipated for this upcoming year of TOT, the transient occupancy tax of $680,000. Transfers from other funds, which is detailed at the end of the 11 by 17 sheets, but a $1.2 million from other funds. Everything from special grants, ATP, AB 939, gas tax is included in there as well. And then the next category is grants, and I'm overlapping that. There's $964,000 there, and donations of $160,000. So they are detailed out here to one level. But to the extreme level is the last page of 11 by 17s. You can really see exactly what source. So in other words, we're looking at revenues of $3 million coming in this upcoming fiscal year, which brings up our available balance to $3.2 million.
Right.
The expenditures, this is a nice recap here. We are plan to spend $1.2 million on road overlays this year. We $615,000 on parks, $978,000 on complete streets, $162,000 on parking lots, $92,000 on facilities, and that means our buildings primarily, and then $75,000 on drainage, and $82,000 on transit projects. So we have 3.1 of expenditures, which leaves us a balance of $474.
So I had one question here.
Right.
$474?
Randy?
So Greg, you know, when you're in your expenditures, so I understand the road overlays and reconstruction, and I understand the parks, and I understand the parking lots, and you've identified, so I've gone through all this. Is Complete Streets your own line item? What is Complete Streets as far as, you have it broken out as its own individual entity? How did we arrive at that, and how did you arrive at that?
On the 11 by 17 that we're going to go through in detail now, each one of these categories, we have detail for each category. So I can hit that now if you would like.
So we have the project name road overlays, then we have parks and their expenditures, and then we have Complete Street and its expenditures. I guess my question is just, so you just bunched, Complete Streets projects, and I'm just, I guess the question is, how did we base the name Complete Streets with $1 million worth of fundings? It's just.
I think at one time, we were focused on road overlays. There were grant money coming in for Complete Streets. And there was quite a push for them as well. Council has always, in my years here, prioritized Complete Streets as a higher priority, and they wanted to see us pursue grants and to allocate them. So it was a way to show, hey, Complete Streets, we are focused, we have budget dedicated, as well as making progress on it.
And Randy, he's put all of ATP in Complete Streets.
Right, I know, I saw that for this year. I was just wondering how we arrived at a line item called Complete Streets.
Well,
that's all.
it is a title to designate those things that are being done to finish out streets that had not been improved to that degree before, as opposed to overlay and maintenance. Isn't that that would be like curbs, gutters, crosswalks, things, sidewalks, things that make the place safer and more walkable?
I mean, it is a trend in the past, 10 years or so. There's been quite a trend, and major grant monies available to complete
Right,
streets,
but you or the staff is using this title, is what Randy's asking. That is what is under this. It's not just miscellaneous. It is distinctly different than the maintenance of existing facilities. Is that?
Right.
That's what I'm asking. So, and also, what you just said, the major differential is the fact that a lot of the funding for Complete Streets comes from grants. So it's not necessarily coming from the general fund.
Right.
Okay, that's,
Okay.
I just needed to understand, I had to wrap my head around, what does that
Right,
word,
and
where did it come from?
and it is an important distinction, because earlier when you talked about the overlay maintenance program, we are doing much better than we were doing, but historically, we've done very poorly.
Right.
So even though we've made major improvement, if we look at the 29-year cycle and compare it to what we're doing, frankly, I think 15 years as a life expectancy of overlaying substandard streets that were built many decades ago and don't have base under them of any quality, we are only keeping up with 50%, and slowly we're sliding backwards, but we're doing a lot better than we were doing before. So I like the distinction between the source of the money, that I would hope that our local money would be going for taking care of what we already have, and then the enhancements come from grants in the complete street category.
We're on the same.
And I think that's the way you're doing it, is it?
Yes.
I want to add something to
And
that.
I don't want to indicate they're all grants. These things all take leverage. You know, you've got to match to certain levels, sometimes as high as 50%, sometimes as low as 10 or 0%.
I just want to add, the term complete streets actually means a street that's safe for all users of the road. So that all residential streets, anything that's not a highway, is a street where a mother with a stroller and a couple of kids can walk safely without being hit. It prioritizes, it makes what's the term? It equalizes the user so that it's not just for motorists speeding down the street, but it would have traffic calming features, sidewalks, bike lanes, things that make the street complete. That's another definition. It includes all the other things, the drains and the greening, the green practices, but that is.
Right, and
that
over the
is
years,
definition.
over the
Yeah.
years, that has changed its definition based upon the source of the revenues or the money. The grants have defined it pretty much,
Yeah.
many of the grants the way you are, but there was a time, in fact, it was brought to my attention this week, somebody quoting the language in our ordinances that require curbs, gutters, and sidewalks, which is something that was created back, the 1911, 1913 acts. Are those the ones where you could say health, safety, and welfare require sidewalks, and the government could then impose the requirement on an old neighborhood and then assess it and pay the taxes, the property adjacents would pay the taxes to do it. Now, that's old thinking too, particularly in an area that considers themselves to be somewhat rural or rustic. And that comes into conflict with the definition of a complete street, which I think
Right.
partially what maybe,
And it also comes into conflict with the ordinance that was passed, I believe, in 1968. And the question is, what are we?
yeah, right. And then when,
Are we
And
rural
and liability
rustic,
for
or what are we?
ADA, on
Right.
ADA liability as well.
One side of the street's got curb and sidewalks, and the other side, it's got curbs and dirt. What are we?
and some have curbs and sidewalk and have hedges growing all the way across them, so you can't use them.
Yeah, I don't think it means that a rural street has to have a paved sidewalk. It just means that there's an area
Right.
where a person can walk. It doesn't have to be
Could be a
paved.
stripe on the
I would
stripe.
also,
Yeah.
I would also like to add to your definition, if you would agree that in a complete street in a rural area, we should have a pathway for horses and buggies.
Buggies?
Well, at least,
Well,
for
the-
horses and pedestrians.
Which
Which
we have on Grand Avenue. We're doing good.
But that's true. The equestrians are part of this, that's part of our heritage, that's part of rural Ojai. I'm all for that, wherever it's, can't have it on every street. But no, for any equestrians listening to this, we are thinking about you as well. We are.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, and maybe to Councilman Haney's point, complete streets could be a subcategory under streets. I mean, that would be a fair way to categorize
I
it.
get it. Like you said, I just wanted to clarify the definition of where it came from. So I appreciate Sousa's explanation and Mayor Johnson's understanding of it also. That it just helps me to.
And maybe a touch more in that direction is part of the paving project includes the required ADA curb ramps at the corners. That's required through federal law.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we have
that's-
to upgrade that. That's really a complete street
Right.
component.
That is a
But we
complete
can
street
do that.
component, yes.
Yeah.
So on that note, if you're good, we'll start with 11 by 17s. We'll go to attachment A, page 2 of 5.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
And just to remind everyone a little bit who remember seeing this, the first section is, this is all broken into these subsections, right? Roads, then parks, then complete streets on the first page. And then the first 5 columns are a summary of the total dollars proposed being spent this year, this upcoming fiscal year we're budgeting. And then in the middle of the page, you can see it break out. And we have Fund 31 shown next to other fund for each fiscal year. So we're looking at the fiscal year 1920, so the second double column over. So Fund 31 will be strictly TOT. The other funds will be everything that's listed at the end of the project here, everything from Let me start off now with road overlay and construction.
1920.
We go down to road overlay and reconstruction total being proposed. Second column over is $1.176 million. The detail of that is over to the right under fiscal year 1920. We have $303,000 coming from TOT. So that was at $600,000 coming from the portion of TOT. So half of that's going to roads. The other half is being allocated to other projects.
Say that again?
So the TOT, like we saw in the recap sheet,
Right, yeah, it's like 600 and some.
yeah, 682,000 is the annual input to that fund, and it accumulates. And we're proposing to spend this year for roads 303,000.
And what are you proposing the rest of it to be used for?
If you go to the page,
Next column,
yeah, if you go over all the way down to sheet 4, page 4, then these 11 by 17s.
I don't, do you have to go that far, Greg? If you go right underneath the column into,
yeah, 1920.
parks, you're seeing your TOT money being spent, 50,000 on, Turf Hill and.
Well, we're not in
17
parks yet. So
But
yeah.
I'm just saying, you're seeing where the,
Yeah. It accumulates
the
to other
mayor's
projects.
asking where the other $300,000 of TOT is, and
It's other projects
and other
to
projects within the community
move along.
versus all of it going to just,
Right.
street paving, Mayor.
I think
So-
we started off strong on streets, and quickly, everybody said, what about, we
we're
can't
gonna
just
get to
do
parks,
streets. Yeah.
We're talking about just streets now, overlay now,
So right now, we're talking streets, and
just overlay, okay.
and if you go over to that right side, 1920, you'll see where we're pulling funds from. We're pulling 173,000 from AB 939 money. So that's a portion of the franchise fee that's by Assembly Bill 939 gets dedicated to promote recycling. So we use rubberized asphalt, so we're able to use that kind of money right there to support the project. We have other funding, which is primarily gas tax. We're pulling 700,000 from that reserve we have for gas tax. 303 from the Fund 31, and then our total between the two of 1.176 million.
Right.
So any questions on streets?
No.
Okay.
I got that, but,
You followed it better than I did.
so Mayor, let me help you out the same way that you helped me out.
Okay, good. Yeah, do that.
No, 'cause
Where's the,
I do get it, I do
yeah,
get it. So,
where's the-
so the total expenditures, for road overlay and reconstruction totals $1,176,000.
okay, and you're
Okay, then
finding
you-
that on which column?
That's on the fiscal year 1920.
Second from the left.
This is the breakdown where the money came from, and this is the total expenditure.
Then you go over to the, you go
You have to
over,
add the numbers together to get that, or are we coming back to the one?
now, so that's the total. If you added the 173, the 699, the 303. Now what Greg has done on the other, so on the second half, the right-hand side of the page, go to FY 1920, and it shows Fund 31, which is our TOT. So it shows you that Greg took $303,000
Right,
out of TOT funding.
right.
And then he just said 173,000 on AB 939 and another 699,000 out of the gas tax, HUDA and SB 1.
Okay, now, when you jump to those numbers, which column, oh, you're going above it, what, the 17350? Is that
Yes.
the reason?
So if
Yeah,
I add 173, the 699, I come to 872. If
Yeah.
I add other funding column with Fund 31 column, which is the 303, then I go back to the left. That gives us the 1176 number.
Okay.
That's why. yeah,
So it
it's gonna
doesn't
be
read
all
across.
day to try and
It's-
figure this out.
it is more circular, okay, yes, yeah, not linear.
Thank you, Councilman Haney. We appreciate the translation.
This takes a lot to figure this
Okay,
out.
and I'm gonna get,
And as we sit there, I guess
This
it'd
is
be,
engineering writing, you know, you have to understand. This is
right,
engineering.
I thought the engineers were linear, though. Yeah, what happened here, yeah?
If this was candid camera, we could play a terrible trick on the mayor and just be making up figures and pretend like we're all following it, except him.
Yeah, I'm not buying it until we have a trace here, so we go all the way forward and then go back, just like our council meetings.
as you say
Okay.
that, next time, I think we'll try to highlight or shade those columns, to highlight them out of all of this other noise, you
Well,
know.
I tell you the other thing that throws you off too is, we've got fiscal year 18-19, then you got 2021, 22. You got all of these columns with all these numbers, and the reality is they mean nothing at this point in time. What means something is fiscal year 19 to 20.
That's right.
That's what we should have in front of us to make it easier just to understand this. That's all, Greg.
I know we've done that in the past where we just showed this year, we're in, and the next year. A lot of people said, well, when are we doing this? We were going to do this project and that project. So I think that's where the 5-year plan helps a lot of people. They know, well, no, my project's on the list, and yours pass quickly around here, so we'll be
Well,
there in no time.
Well, it's interesting. If you start out with your cover sheet, you're talking about how we reached a plateau, and if anything, we might be going down. Yet, if you look at this chart, our revenues are going up, just a percentage up, but that's not what's reflected in your cover sheet. So I kind of said, you kind of got yourself in trouble with that one. And then the mayor, being the procrastinator, the
The procrastinator. Protagonist?
yes, thank you.
Prognosticator.
Prognosticator.
Oh,
Telling us we're
much
heading into
better.
a recession.
I'm enjoying this.
We're headed into a recession, I know we're in trouble. And you know we're in trouble if I'm running this meeting, so that's. Right
Is
there.
our, Bill, is
This is
our
called a workshop, Randy, and you're welcome to join in. We like that. Okay.
Can I make one comment about this whole thing?
Yeah.
The reason why we have 5 years is because this is not just the current year budget, but we are required to bring a 5-year CIP plan, which is our 5-year plan to city council to get these projects kind of in the loop, in the process here. And then we bring that current year budget into the overall budget process. So the 1920 budget is included in the budget workshop or the budget hearing that we'll have in a couple of weeks. But this here includes all of these for now. And it's gotten a little bit complicated because Greg and I have tried to bring something together that can meet his needs for prognosticating these projects out there, programming them, as well as my needs to show where the money is, and trying to bring it. As we get closer into the present, we can get better ideas of what our actual needs are in the individual current years. So.
Well, I very much like it. I just would have liked it about 12 hours earlier. But,
We
I
promise next year we'll
needed
do it.
24 hours at the speed with which I'm processing this, but, okay, so of the money that we are shifting over, that which is going for existing road maintenance is 50% of that, roughly. Is that correct?
Of the money we're shifting over.
From TOT. We said we were putting that into improving our roads, and now it looks like that.
Well, I think that's a little tricky because we put in 20% of the TOT every year goes to the TOT fund to be held in reserve.
into Fund 31.
So we're spending 300,000 of that this year, but we only spent 60,000 of it last year. So really, the average, if you look back, varies. We don't have it all shown here, but I think you'll find we aren't spending 50%.
No, we're not. It's maybe
'cause there's a lot of-
25%.
We're spending, yeah, a lot. There's a lot of other needs in the city that are
Well, we're going to
using
get
part
to
of that
that and
money.
discuss them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the characteristic, or they're characterizing the money from the TOT for roads is really not accurate. It's for capital improvements of all sorts. Is
Right.
that
Yes.
correct?
Right.
Yes.
Oh, no wonder we're,
I think it's the primary
This is
funding.
why I'm looking forward to discussing some of those.
Yeah. I think that recap sheet was a great way to see it. It's a primary funding source, right? It's out of the annual revenues, it's 680,000. But we get a lot of grant money, and we get a lot of gas tax, AB 939, and other funds too that all go to Fund 31.
but we have transferred, what, $1 million, almost $1.3 million over a 2-year period from TOT, correct?
Yes.
Fund 31.
Okay, and so $1.3 million, and we're gonna spend 3 of it on overlays, and $1 million on something else?
3 million, did you say 3 million?
No, I said $1.3 million, roughly. Isn't it like 660 and 680 or something that were the 2-year totals?
The
that you
2-year
sh-
transfer to Fund 31 is about
Right.
1.3.
That comes to about, I think, comes to about $1.3 million, right?
That's right.
And we're spending roughly 300,000, that .3 million on roads.
Yes.
So I guess that's what Bill says, we'll be interested in seeing where's the other million going, but okay.
Okay.
We're going to get to that.
Yeah.
Also, Mayor, I think what Greg does, and I think it's one of the things, seriously, Greg, that you do well,
Thanks.
is he goes after all of this additional funding through these grants, and that's what he supplements our streets with. So it's not the fact that we have to spend 1.3 million every 2 years completely on streets. I see how he does it, and I think it's a win for the community, that he takes a percentage, looks like it's about 50% over the 2-year period, puts it back into streets and then puts 50% back into maintaining the infrastructure of the rest of our community. So I get that, and that's where we'll weigh in on that other 50%. That's what Bill's saying.
Okay.
And I should mention, for streets, we just had in the last cycle $250,000, like Randy's saying, for STP, the federal grant for street overlays. And they used to dole out a lot more money from the feds for that kind of grant funding, but they haven't done it for a long time. And there's even talk at the federal level now of jacking infrastructure as priorities back up, so they might return it.
Yeah, unless they stop yelling at each other in the White House.
So at this point, we haven't seen it for years, but if that comes through, it'll be great. It'll really supplement, because all cities across the country have infrastructure suffering. I think we all know and see that everywhere in the paper. So we're not different in that way. We're a little different within the county. There's certain richer cities like Thousand Oaks that have much higher pavement condition indexes, and the smaller, poorer cities tend to not have as good.
Well, in the older cities, that's part of our problem. That's what, even, yeah.
When we just did that street up on Mallory Way, that was beat to the bone. 2 or 3 inches of asphalt over a clay road.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure our.
It wasn't base, it was just over
Yeah, right.
native
Of course,
soils, you know.
of course. I mean, it was dirt road and you throw some asphalt on it.
Right.
That's what they used to do.
And
The American dream.
luckily, we have pretty low loads. I mean, the things that kill our streets are trash trucks twice a week. That's the biggest
Oh,
load
yeah.
we have. If we just had cars, they'd be looking a lot better.
Well, in the South, they used to spray asphalt oil on the dirt. That was the street.
Trucks.
Well, that oil could come from your own car.
Yeah.
You know, did it in front of your house.
Oh, that's what people do. They change the oil, they just put it out in the street.
Yeah,
From their
Dust
change
control.
oil in their car.
cuts down the weeds.
Yeah.
I'll try to keep you guys moving, or us all moving.
Yeah.
So, all right, so we're on to parks, and we're seeing in the summary column, 212,000 committed to remodeling the restrooms. And that's
Well, actually, it's 424,000 over 2 years.
Thank you. Yeah, it's half the project, assuming we get it started next calendar year. It's really, I guess we don't have it shown there, but it's a lower priority. It always has been. Every time other projects interfere, we always kill Libby restroom for years. Like we had the SWP project came up, we pulled it from here. We said, hey, this is not. We're working with Ojai Civic, and we're hopeful that they're going to donate a lot of money. They have requested we provide the variations with further detail and better estimates and so on. And
Remember,
we've
I
done
asked a
that.
question a while back on that these are basically custom design remodels.
Yes.
And there's a market out there where cities they're handling their restrooms and their parks and things with fairly attractive modular units. And I wondered, have you ever priced, what the modular option would be versus a custom design?
Yes, so when we did the restrooms at Sarzati a few years ago, we had a modular up front, and
What's the cost differential?
it looked better than it was. We landed up doing a construction, it was quasi-modular, it had some prefabricated portions of it.
I mean, I've seen them, they have a crane. You just put the foundation in with the stubs and they
Right.
crane them in and
Yep.
plop them down. I was just wondering what the cost differential is.
And it was, at that point, it was not that beneficial because we were looking at it, but we gave an option for a modular approach where there's prefabricated walls and so on, and they used some of that for those
Okay.
bathrooms out at, but it wasn't that beneficial. And it really limited what we had. You had to use.
Well, is this a rehab, though? Are you not talking about building
So
more restrooms?
what's proposed here
are you?
is a remodel
Yeah,
of the existing restrooms,
Right,
not
so-
changing the footprint.
Correct.
But there is a consideration that's been worked on with the Parks and Rec Commission and with Ojai Civic to have more restrooms that would serve the purposes of events, special events in the park as well as
Right,
at the bowl.
definitely.
Well,
And
they
that'll
tore it.
approach $1 million plus. If we're lucky enough that Ojai Civic is willing to substantially donate to that, because they built those restrooms originally, and donated the park, I think everybody knows.
This is also why I was upset the way our contract with Sterling lets them game the system and not pay the facilities fee they're supposed to be paying. They could help pay for stuff like this. Just a
Well,
comment.
they have Bill, they have a reduced rate of 50 cents.
No, but no, they count comp tickets as, they don't count comp tickets in their tickets, so they're putting people in the stands that they're not paying a facilities fee for.
Okay.
And it's
I-
and it's a large percentage.
I agree with you on that. Okay.
And that's one of the little leakages
no pun
That-
intended.
that- that we'll-
Yeah,
That we can fix.
Yeah.
So you're saying that we're indirectly comping them when they use the restroom?
Well, then they should pay, we should have a little
Without permission,
donation
okay.
can.
Well,
Okay,
So I wanna
Greg,
mention
grab
that-
hold of this again.
All right, I'll try to keep us rolling. And if you look to the right with the detail, you'll see this is a heavily leveraged project. We're assuming and hoping for contributions from Ojai Civic Association. The Prop 68 that was approved over a year ago at the state level provided $200,000 minimum floor level to cities for parks and rec purposes. So we've got 100,000 of that going to this restroom, and we've got 100,000 going to the futsal courts. So that's why that's so leveraged off to the right where you see it.
it's good.
And then if you look back to the left, there is a sewer line pump system being proposed in the sewer in the Libby Park as well.
Which the sanitary district is really on our case about.
Yep, it's been this way for 60 years, but we're proposing to put a grinder pump system out in a manhole there, which will grinds up the goodies and puts them through a small pipe.
We have a slump in the sewer line where it crosses the creek on the way to,
Yeah.
and so we're not draining our restrooms.
Right. That's called a commutator, if you want the technical, or the muffin masher or something.
Or,
We had very large ones at the county in the jails.
or a holding vessel.
Personally, I would argue that should be a higher priority than B. I mean, that's a health and safety matter. We've been ignoring it for a while, but that's just my personal opinion.
Yep, and that we've never had it. It should back up in the restrooms if it ever does back up, but there is some concern that if it was somehow a high flow situation, it could pop a manhole over near the post office and get it at that little creek
We
area.
get a lot of rain, we get a big event, and boom, we got sewage in Libby Park. It's not just a possibility, it's a probability.
Knock on wood, it's never happened in the history I've ever heard of.
This
but
is 17,500?
17,500 split over 2 years, about a $35,000 project.
Well, are we gonna get through this and then come back and
But
debate each
that
one?
sounds very important.
Anyway, I just,
And it is somewhat, like I want to mention, that line's been there for 50 years and it's never happened yet.
Okay.
But
But
it's something that could happen.
Years.
and
Yeah.
every year it's worse.
Okay, so going along with what
Next.
what Randy is suggesting, let's just kind of get through this as to what is being
All right.
proposed, then we can pick out the things that.
All right, I'll try to pick up the pace. The next one I would consider to be a much higher priority is the pergola timber. When we were inspecting the paint and some issues at the pergola up front, the pergola is failing and we need to replace it.
Failing
So
why?
The timber is rotten. It's rotting.
Rot from termites or rot from dry rot or rot from water intrusion?
Dry water.
Okay, is that a maintenance neglect issue?
Well, it's got to be redone, so it's time to get
Well,
redone.
no, that's not my
Say,
question.
what's the cause?
Oh, you mean could you have prevented it?
Yes, by better maintenance, because
I don't-
wood lasts indefinitely if it's kept dry and free of termites.
It seems to be pergolas last about 20 years. It is possible. It's difficult when you have, like you've got up there, plants growing through it. It's very hard to get in and treat the wood when you've got the wisteria growing through it.
That's
It's the same
maintenance,
problem.
allowing plants to go through it.
We could kill the plants or pull them off. I don't think anybody
This
wants
is the
that.
pergola in front of the ticket office type of thing?
Okay.
No, this is out in front on the road.
Oh, the new one that was replaced, or
Well, it was 20 years old.
What I'm trying to say is, to have timber replacement on a 20-year-old project means there's, in my mind, suggests a maintenance problem.
or the materials need to be changed to
defective.
something other than wood, because wood will rot. Well, you're right on a
Seeing
pergola.
20 years pretty common on street signs, the pergola out front, City Hall. We're seeing it there. We're seeing it over at the police department pergolas.
It's non-protected, it's open to the
Yeah,
elements.
right. It
And it's
will
got-
always rot.
Wear faster
I
than
think
we
without
know.
plants, I mean, if we did, you could do a flashing on every ridge.
No,
you
that's
know.
that's the standard, is you put a flashing on it, on top of the wood.
Still rot.
I mean, Councilman Haney probably builds a lot of these. I don't know, flashing on top of all pergolas, I've never seen it.
Well,
Yeah.
again, some of your high ends are gonna do it, but
Yeah.
that's a rustic pergola, it's supposed to
Well,
look.
Okay, there was a I'm sorry.
May I'm gonna make another point, and again,
Trying.
I'll probably get shot
I
down for
totally
this.
jumped on you, I'm sorry.
When we're looking at spending this kind of money, and we have a problem with rot and it's exposed, what we've been doing in our company on pool trellis situations is there's a company that does structurally rated
Okay.
recycled milk bottle.
Okay, guys, we're gonna never get through
What I'm
this.
trying to say is
I
we
know
can
what you're
maybe
trying to.
do it and never have it rot again.
That is, I have some benches
Okay,
made
think
out
you would
of.
accept-
guys,
All right.
Make some notes to yourself, and
All
we'll
right.
come
That's
back
a
to
good-
how.
There was Greg, just so you know, there was a pergola committee that raised all the money for
That's
that.
right.
They may still, they're not organized, I don't think, anymore, but there was, a lot of, because I see on here that the upkeep doesn't have any other fund money.
there's
It may
no
be a
endowment.
question to Civic Association or anyone else to at least see if there's an option out there.
Just let's-
Right, there's a plaque out there with that committee from '99 or something,
Let-
right?
Let's
Yeah.
look at longer life by design.
As long as the mysterious.
Yeah, again, that's, there's a round timbers, it'd be hard, you could put a half flash detail or something on the top. You could go to plastic timbers, it doesn't have that natural look, and,
Let's move on.
okay.
Regardless of the source of the money, you're just simply telling the council there's a necessity to
Yes.
Replace
to
it.
replace that, or it's gonna fall on
We'll do the
somebody.
best we can to get pressure-treated timber, but, or consider, we'll look at,
You can't buy good pressure-treated timber.
Okay,
in
guys,
All right,
California.
all right.
quality control, you guys do that later. We just understand the need.
So,
onward and upward to
Plants on-
Sarzati Park,
Growing
Field
plants.
1 light poles. We've had this on as a secondary priority, and Ojai Civic is interested in supporting these as well. We've also got the futsal courts. We had those on last year's CIP. We were moving ahead full steam to do the courts, and Parks and Rec Commission really wanted to see the 2 courts out at one time. We do have the funding source now with this Prop 68, which our finance director keeps reminding me has not been received yet. And so I think he wants to make sure we receive it. They were promising spring, and I guess we haven't seen it yet. But at least that funding, this is for, I guess it's not well noted in the description there, but it's 2 courts. This is double courts with no lights over at Sarzati per the master plan that was recently developed.
And are those light poles metal replacing wood?
There's, yes, they are, metal.
Okay, thank you. They're
Yeah, they-
wood now,
Yes.
yeah.
and Mayor,
Yes.
the other question, so your, half of that money is 112,000 is TOT money, and then the 162 is the Prop 64 monies, is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Other funds, Ohio Civic combined with Prop 68. Mhm.
68.
I think we got 100 of Prop 68 and 62, hopeful from Ohio Civic.
So this is where the, sort of the mission creep or the mission shift has occurred over what the public thought we were doing with TOT money when we pledged it to, or when the council, previous councils pledged us to taking care of the streets. We're now using it for these.
I hate to say they pledged it to streets. They pledged it to Capital Improvement Fund, which was an open category. Which
Okay.
I think in most cities you see a variety of projects somewhat like this.
Greg, what's the problem with the light pole?
The light poles are wood poles that have got some woodpeckers and so on working on them.
And the basketball court's is that just a black hardtop, right?
That's actually a post-tension concrete, long-term, high-quality court.
The
wait.
replacement,
New.
the new
For
ones.
The new courts. These are the ones that are off
On
very
off in the
south.
corner on the new master
They're
plan.
mixed use.
Yep.
Right, near the Quonset
Yeah.
hut.
They're,
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
soccer and basketball.
Yeah,
Who's, Futsal?
Futsal, yeah.
Futsal.
futsal.
The new rage, yep. Maybe
I thought pickleball was a new rage.
That comes next.
we're not
Are
touching
these,
that.
are these built at the standard professional court size, like 7,500 square feet, or how large is the basketball?
Standard, I think the larger size, the ruling factor is the basketball court. Futsal has some flexibility in it, but they'll work with the standard
Yeah.
basketball courts.
So this is really the size of a tennis court, but is that correct?
Size of
or-
a basketball court, and then it works for futsal, so it's not tennis court.
Bigger than a tennis court?
Dimensions, I think, were more like 60 by 100, I think. it
That's
was.
pretty close to a tennis
Yeah,
court.
they're pretty close, Mark.
Yeah, and then we had a
Quite,
fence around, they want a tight fence around them as well for futsal, so the ball doesn't go out of bounds, it stays
Right,
in
okay.
for play, yeah.
I was just looking at the price as to what they cost to build, and you say it's post-tension, and it's,
That's what raises the cost of them.
The post-tension is great because you get a long-term quality court.
yeah,
You're not gonna
you
have a
get it.
cracked up
Oh, that's
court in
better,
10 years, yeah. Mhm.
Yep.
I think the courts out here at Libby that were heavily financed by Ojai Valley Tennis Club,
New ones.
The
now,
lower
a lot
Libby's
of
yeah,
are
the
them
lower,
are
the
post-tension.
Yeah.
the rebuild, yeah, that was all
those are
post-tension.
in great shape, 10 years plus old, right? They're terrific
Okay.
shape. Okay, so onward to complete streets. We've got, the first project shown was, really, we do have an existing grant project of 120,000. That one's half match. And that was for bike lanes on Grand Avenue.
Where's that?
And that's the first project at 10,000 shown under
Oh, okay,
1920.
10,000, not 120.
It's
Right.
10.
Okay, I'm doing the 3-year cumulative.
Okay.
So if we want to get into it this year, and
Those are bike lanes on Grand, okay.
it's a hot topic and it's a big diversion, so it's difficult. I think,
Well, there's also the philosophical issue, whether we're gonna take back
I
our
thought you
right of
was
way
interested
or
in
take
that.
out parking. And we gotta make that decision as a council,
right.
whether we're gonna take back our right of way or whether we're going to take out parking. We don't have to take out parking if we take back our right of way. And that's gonna have to be a political decision.
I think, what is it, forget the extra, 13-foot extra right-of-way on both the north and south side. You
Right.
can see everything's set back. So the north side has
It's
most of the
heavily
sidewalks.
encroached by adjacent property owners.
Yeah, people
North side.
partially,
Throughout the city.
most people have respected it to a certain degree, but they've encroached.
Underline
otherwise.
most.
Right. And
Okay.
so that'd be,
Well, it's the south side that has the 13-foot easement.
right. I think it's split. I think it's 66 total, 40-foot curb to curb. So that leaves you 22. And I think we had, so the math's close there, 66, 40. So it should have been, so we should add 26, 13-foot north and south. So even if you look like the
I don't see
gables,
13 on Grand on the south, on the north side. Do you guys?
when you go by the gables and so on, you'll see it set back pretty far, all those
It's-
walls.
gables is,
It's,
but as you-
it's a wider, it's a wider right of way on the south side, you're right,
Right.
yeah. That's where the horse path was.
Okay, but I think the north side has sidewalks most of the way, so the south side is obvious
It's got a
place for
wider on the
multi-use.
south side. All I'm just saying is ultimately, we're gonna have to make that decision as a council,
Right,
whether we're gonna take back our right of way for bike paths or whether we're going to take out parking for bike paths.
and if we wanted to, we have the money available to improve that existing right-of-way, and put in DG and put in a multi-use DG path.
And we have the right to tell private property owners to take out their encroachments
Okay.
at their expense,
Mayor?
if we have the political will to ask for that.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, guys,
I just had a
Randy's,
quick-
need to ask a
Greg,
comment.
for the budgeted amount of money, what were you going to do with that $10,000?
We were gonna have public discussions and council discussions and design efforts to support it.
Right, so,
So if we go there, like I'm saying, we're gonna be very busy trying to make the ATP work, and that'll take a whole lot of effort in the demonstration projects. But if you wanna go here, we could.
But if we do or we don't, it's not that much money, and the money won't be spent if we don't. So what, how much
rolls
more time
forward.
do you want to spend on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So next project would be under ADA implementation. We have 132,000. This is a bigger project that I think had some discussion the city manager mentioned just lately. We were just reaching out, and this is on South Montgomery from the Nest down past Emporium. Anybody who's walked on that sidewalk on the east side of the street, it's got a crazy cross slope going
Yeah, they
way
got a
back.
tree, got a tree heaving it up.
It's,
No, it's
it's
more
beyond the
than that.
heave, though. It was built that way. It was
Yes.
built to preserve the tree with its crazy cross slope.
That's what I, yeah.
Yeah, right. So the fix on that is to kick the curb out and
And take away
meander the
parking.
sidewalk. And while we're at it, go ahead and make the ADA, where you cross each driveway, ADA compliant as well. So it becomes a fairly substantial project.
And reducing parking.
And no, parking's preserved all along the entire way. No, not one space is lost there.
What about during construction?
There's minor construction impacts. We just did a lot of construction and
It's already a narrow street when it's parked on both sides. It's
That's-
narrow lanes when it's parked on both sides.
I would say from Wachters up, it gets very wide. It gradually opens. You got a lot of room up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's a great place to narrow it a little bit because there's a lot of pedestrians walk back and forth between Emporium and the Art Center and everything else. So it's a good place to tighten it up.
How many linear feet are you talking about for 102,000?
It's about, I'm going to ballpark 120 feet.
Okay.
Yep.
I was in Wachters yesterday, and they were concerned.
Yeah.
And I guess the manager wasn't there when somebody from the city came, but can you reach out and talk to
Yep.
them
I think we just did
again?
the initial effort. And really, the Wachters is an optional section. We can stop. We're hoping to correct the driveway approach
Well,
at the Emporium.
Your
If we do
inspector-
that, we go right past the Emporium. We can stop
Concerned
it.
about their big trucks.
And your inspector who was
Right.
working around talking to
Guys,
property owners was
we keep
saying,
drifting into policy debates rather than what is being
Okay.
proposed for next year's
All right.
budget. And you can always change that when we get to the end.
All right.
Okay, I hear you. The next project is Bike Trail Bridge at Fox Canyon Branca.
Yeah.
This one, we've tried, last year, the council asked us to try to flip this to a bike trail extension, and we have tried. It really takes an amazing amount of effort.
Well, I'm
to
gonna
get
just express
very
an
little.
opinion here. I don't see the priority. Given the fact that we got people in wheelchairs trying to get in from the Capri Hotel to downtown, on dirt, and those kind of things, I don't even see why we even have this as a project.
It's a remnant project they had already secured before I got here, and luckily they haven't killed our funding. It's a C. You can
We don't
see-
have outside funding for it anymore.
No, if you look to the right,
Is this grant money?
this is in,
Other funds?
We still have outside money for this?
yes, this one is
47?
seriously,
100% outside money?
No. it didn't
I
say
think it
that.
is. I think it's 100%. You look to the right and you'll see that funding
Yeah, it
source
says
all outside.
under other fund,
Isn't that a 50/50?
but then you, okay, so that's 100% funded
Yeah,
with
CMAC
not-
and TDA Article 3 is all
Okay, well,
funded.
then I withdraw
But
my
I mean, it is-
objection.
Stuff like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Why not just do
That's all
it?
you can spend
It
it
is.
on.
I think the request last year is if we could extend the bike trail from the Humane Society over there. It's complicated working with the consignment people.
You mean over at Bryant?
Yes.
Well,
No. Right now, the bike trail ends at the back end of the Condor.
Right, but
storage
that's not,
place.
that's not the Fox Canyon Barranca Bridge.
Last year is requested that we flip from this to extending the bike trail,
You're saying where the money's
that
being
area.
used, yeah.
and we've been
I
chasing
don't have a
that.
problem with that as long as it's 100%
Wait, wait,
funded
wait.
outside.
I'm sorry, we clarify that? Extend the bike trail to where? To the other side of this?
Right
Over
there,
into Soul Golf
Behind the
Course.
golf
Oh, you
course.
can do that for $42,000?
It's actually a total between the two of closer to 130,000.
And that would take it all the way down also on the turn, pave it all the way down to Ojai Ave too?
We are not getting too far. There's various levels of support at the county and quite a few people we deal with on that. We're trying to make it happen, but it's not very successful.
Bike trail currently goes up to the edge of the Soul Park property. So do you mean from that spot all the way down to Ojai Avenue?
We mean at least over to the driving into Soul Park Golf Course.
So
Yeah, it's-
because it goes through all the way to the back from Bryant,
Right.
and then you're talking about paving up there, then sideways, then down next to Whispering Oaks, all the way down.
We won't be able to pave all the way down to Ojai Avenue, but we
It
can
would
at
just be
least
through that little.
we can at least get it out to the driveway. Yeah.
Whatever you do, it's all outside money.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it's weird there because the bike trail kind of continues, but it's dirt.
It's only really a horse trail
Yeah,
at that point.
Yeah,
Exactly,
I've
yeah.
gotten
Get a
stuck.
mountain bike.
I've gotten
wanna
stuck
go there.
there. I've gotten
So we're trying to
stuck.
create a multi-use
Electric bike works.
surface that everybody would support, and we're having a hard time
But-
getting
but
support.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
not the dirt there's not packed in
Yeah.
anyway.
But it is an important project because Soul Park is being looked at for more and more activities, and someday we might be managing Soul Park, and if we can get the trail going there, I mean, there's so much more that could happen at Soul Park if we didn't have to drive there or risk our life crossing the Ojai Avenue.
Okay, well, is that what this money is for, to do that? Is it, because it says Fox, the
It says
trail-
Fox
the
Canyon
bridge.
because that's what the grant says. But last year you requested that we try to extend the bike trail, and we have tried, and we're not quite ready to call it dead and move on, but we may do that soon.
Okay, well.
Again, it's priority C. Everybody says the money floats forward. It's not really a
Well,
high
but let's
priority.
not lose the money if it's
No,
there.
let's
Right.
get, and
Well,
let's.
let's call it dead and move on as far as the budget
Tell
deliberation
me
on
more
that be.
about it sometime. Maybe I can get some advocates.
Okay, the next project is the ATP. You may have heard of this project before. So we've got a programming consultant spread across 3 years. You can see that's not covered by the grant, so there's another hit on the Fund 31 resources.
I'm sorry, Greg, is that 3 years or 4 years?
Well,
The start of this year?
the upcoming year and the next 2 years after,
Right, okay.
So-
We started it with 8,000 already.
yes.
So this is local money being used for the,
To support the ATP grant. We're actually not, I think in the next couple of years, we'll have a lot less spent. A lot of it we're combining into the grant, the design effort. The next, you can see it's broken into these various categories. This past year, we had a lot of effort.
Mayor, I have one question, just real quick
go
regarding
ahead,
that.
go ahead.
So I see that funding is coming from the TOT. ATP can't pay for itself?
That's what he just said, didn't cover it all, and I had the same reaction you had. That's more local money for something that originally I think was thought to be self-supporting, but okay,
Thank you.
It all takes support. I mean,
But I thought
you
so.
can see other funds for the total ATP project are $700,000 this fiscal year. And you can see that what we're spending to support that is in the realm of $80,000. So it's a 10-to-1 ratio, but yep, it is true. There's no way you can push these giant, complicated grants through without support. Sometimes they pay for that, but it's almost possible to pay for staff time, but you can. So yeah, in this case, we're spending, if my, 80 to 100,000 in matching funds. I'd say matching. It's not matching the grant really, but it's support funds, Fund 31, and we're spending about 700,000 in grant money this upcoming fiscal year. Okay, so that is the end of complete streets. Parking lot maintenance is probably not so exciting, but we don't really have much in the way of outside funding. They're fairly, when we go to the vehicle and equipment fund, you'll see we're proposing to purchase a slurry trailer, a crack fill trailer, and some tools for our Bobcat so we can grind and fix parking lots better ourselves. We know how to do this work, and we can do a nice job maintaining the parking lots. We actually really saved, the farmers market parking lot and the plaza parking lot were in bad shape 6-7 years ago, but some heavy slurries and good crack fill jobs, and they're hanging in there. They're not the ultimate parking lots, but they're pretty decent.
Do we have a decent base on Lower Libby? I see you have a mill fill there.
Lower Libby is pretty bad, I think.
Is there a base?
Yeah,
There's base there.
you can see it.
Yeah.
Just go down and walk over it.
Yeah, there's the base, yeah. All right.
So that one is tricky because it's so far gone. Do we keep letting it go? We're kind of mixed on it. At one point, we were just going to fix half of it because it was going to be the bike park, and the bike park has kind of lost.
You know how thick it is now, roughly, 3-inch?
No, I would guess
But
probably
doesn't-
3 on 6.
That's-
It's better than our
Question?
roads. If we just would overlay it, we'd be done. Why don't we do it?
And that's what's proposed.
I have a question. For example, at the Ojai retreat, I believe there are parking lots in town that are not paved, and they work very well. It's just very hard, it's just dirt. But there must be something on it to keep the surface level and not sinking during the rain. But there may be other ways to solve the problem.
It's tricky to convert. A lot of people do it with the grants because you got to pull everything out and put a porous subgrade in it that pulls the water in and drains it if you have good soils below that will accept it. So it's hard to do. It would cost a lot more money to flip this thing to a
flip it
porous
into-
pavement.
Would
And
it
also to
eventually
maintain
pay for itself?
Sorry?
Would it eventually pay for itself?
Not in the
Not
near
in our
term, not in the
lifetime.
near decades, no.
All right.
No.
It'll take a lot more to maintain it.
Yeah.
May I have a question
Yes, Randy.
regarding the parking lot is, I think it's the last 3 years, we haven't increased any of the, I don't know if you want to call them taxes, but we haven't on the plaza maintenance.
The Plaza Maintenance District, right, so they approximately 6 or 7 years ago approved 5 years of 5% increase per year. So they had a 25% increase over the past 7 years, but it did finalize out about 2 years ago.
Because there's a couple of these areas that all come into special districts, and I keep seeing each year the special districts not being raised as far as trying to increase revenues to maintain them at a higher level. So that's all I'm just asking is, does that play into any future requests when you come back to council regarding increase in fees?
Because we just went through 5 years of 5% increase, and they just finished that, I mean, we do get a fair amount of complaints, if that's a factor, of the business owners, of the property owners. And so it was a 25% increase, and it has brought the fund from being an annual deficit, which accumulated, I think the accumulation, we're still in about $150,000 accumulated fund negative balance. So that's being paid off over the next few years, and we'll be back to a zero balance, and then we'll have this surplus that can start. We're already starting to share. They're paying for one of the projects not shown here, but listed under the assessment district for the plaza is we're planning to paint the whole arcade this year, and they're paying for that and a lot of other
Do we
improvements.
sublet the parking lot like to say farmer's market, or is that something that's an in-kind
It
contribution?
was a
for-
5-year agreement. It wasn't much. I think they pay $5,000 a year.
I
No,
think
it's not that
anyway.
much. No, it's not that much.
No, but I'm just wondering, you got
It's
that,
not
and,
5,000.
I think it's 1,000 per year.
Yeah, it's
And-
not, I don't think it's.
and what's the new restaurant, that, Rainbow,
Sage?
Yeah, Sage, they came out onto what was supposedly a small performance area, and they pay something, right?
Their outdoor dining permit's pretty substantial. I don't have it off the cuff, but I would.
Does that money go back into taking care, maintaining that area, or do we?
Assessment district if it's coming out of it.
It goes into general fund. It doesn't go to that
Yeah.
particular. So that, yeah, there's a few, because even the Vine has an outdoor dining permit, and they, so those could go back to help maintain.
And what, they pay per year for that?
I'm gonna ballpark 1,500 and, for the Vine, and I think for the, Sage, it's extra square footage, not that much more, in the ballpark, a couple grand
Is that per month or per year?
per year.
Per year. Wow, that's
Wow.
pretty cheap commercial.
It's pretty cheap, thinking of the revenue they get per table.
On the other
Right.
hand, if we're not putting it back into that area for maintenance,
That's
maybe,
right.
you know, we should.
Yes, I mean, it's not like it goes to general fund for.
I know, but then it ends up
Kinda ought to
being,
go to the assessment district, really.
Well, and the other part of that is if it goes to the general fund, then it means the community as a whole is paying for these upgrades.
Well, yeah.
It may be a small percentage, but it still is a percentage. And these, I think these assessment districts our goal should be self-sustaining, if we could.
And we're on course for the
I don't know how to
plaza.
do that, but
And we're in good shape, plaza and lighting district now, self-sustaining. And, so the plaza is,
I know one of the big contributors is the Chevron station, and they do all their own maintenance.
And does,
I mean, we're not obviously maintaining the private property. It was supposed to be, the frontage and the common areas is,
And does the
like we do plenty of work on the frontage, the sidewalks out there. But it's mostly really oriented towards the plaza area and the arcade area and so on.
and does the Italian restaurant pay an annual fee too? The Italian restaurant for
Yes.
their patio?
Right, they have an outdoor.
So all
dining.
told, between those three, we're looking at maybe 3,500, 4,000 a year?
I think it's more like, I would say $6,000, $7,000, somewhere in there.
Pretty cheap.
Is that normal, the fees, compared to other
Well, they're
cities?
reviewed by, there's a consultant that reviewed all those fees, and that's where it came from. I can't say I've ever,
you know, one is how much is charged and the other is what the money's used for.
Right.
And if the money goes just into the general fund, then,
right.
I think it ought to go into the district.
well, it seems like it should, rather, before we,
Yeah.
start thinking about raising their taxes, is to at least keep
Yeah.
the income for taking care of it. Yeah.
But I do want to mention, I mean, that 25% increase over the recent years has really brought it from being an annual deficit to being a significant annual surplus.
Right, but does that include the parking lots?
No,
Okay, and what takes care of those?
it's right here. It's Fund 31.
Mostly the TOT.
But does that mean that everybody pays for the parking lots?
Yes.
Or it competes with all the other?
Mostly transient.
Yeah, so maybe a parking authority, his day has finally come. We've talked about it for 45
Amen.
years.
Amen. Yes.
Okay.
Right.
Well, again, it's food for thought. It's just something that we should address somewhere.
I just can't, it's hard to imagine that much outdoor space is 500 a month is market.
Or whatever, saying 1,500, 2,000, somewhere in that ballpark.
Well, no, that would be a lot more than 6,000 a year then.
1,500, 2,000 for each of those three
No,
locations.
it comes out to about 400 or 500 a month for all three.
Oh, per month, I see.
You think on a per month basis,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of outdoor tables.
Well, I think you'd have to, again, we get into the weeds, you'd have to measure all that square footage
Oh, I agree.
and get a commercial number on that. Is it $3 a foot? Is it
Yeah.
$1.50 a foot? What are we actually charging?
Well, you would, yeah.
So it sounds like the plaza thing's carrying itself. The parking lot, I didn't realize, I thought that was part of the business improvement district, but that's not.
No.
So there's nobody being charged for that. We're just,
We need a parking district.
I mean, the farmer's market, like I'm saying, it's a minimal, the council had reviewed that one. It
right,
was.
but if we're paying, it doesn't make any difference if we
And that,
goes
I
into
don't,
one
you
pocket.
might
and
recall that a
comes-
few years ago, the
Well,
farmer's
we're
market
not-
came in a big fuss and said, hey, this is crazy, we don't make any money.
The
and
Range
other-
parking lot is a public parking lot too.
You mean the one that's in front of Rainbow Bridge?
Yeah.
That one is primarily owned by the city, and there's a portion owned by
That's what I'm saying.
by
Actually,
Rains.
we're doing the maintenance on it.
Well, Ellen Rains contributes. We don't do the maintenance on that portion. Like when we did the slurry and so on, Ellen Rains prorated paid for that square footage, that portion.
Okay.
So yeah, we are careful to not do the maintenance on
Okay,
that.
but you've clarified it, that the plaza itself the fees being charged for it are covering maintenance and basic repair. So the other is not an issue, but it is a possible source of
I think in a
revenue
couple
to
of
be
years here,
generated.
that would be, we could go ahead and switch it to that. It's not clearly defined in the assessment district, and we could
Okay,
add
well, I
that.
was just thinking if we were running short and we were having deteriorated parking lots, but then since those are two separate subjects, it's, we can talk about this at another time then, so.
Right.
Okay, what's next?
Okay, onward. Facilities, we've got, let's see, I was trying to get.
If we did away with the diodes and the curtains, we'd have more than enough money to replace these lights.
Yeah, we're late on that.
Oh, Steve swore the lights were replaced recently and were fancy new ones.
No?
Steve McClary said the lights were replaced recently and were fancy new ones.
Those are T8 obsolete fluorescents.
That's what he told me.
Well, it's not accurate.
Well, something's not accurate.
Keep in mind, I just wanted to throw this out, that they're not LED, but these newer T8 bulbs are very efficient. These, it's
they're
very
yellow as
incremental
hell.
going to LED. So we're gonna see,
But they're still fluorescent, which are now obsolete.
Well,
T8 bulbs, I wouldn't call them obsolete, but yeah,
Well,
people are going. The
we're
trick
not-
with LED, everybody complains about color. I think they tested a couple LEDs and
You can
some
do
people
whatever
don't like
color
it.
you want with LED.
It's getting there, yeah.
And they can be put on daylight controls in the way that fluorescent can't be. Fluorescents can't be dimmed and can't be put on sunlight control, and they're about 1/4 the cost of the energy.
What
Some
do you think about it,
LEDs
Randy?
can be dimmed if
Into
you
the
get the right
weeds.
one, right?
I'm just saying, if priority for me is lighting over diodes and curtains.
Didn't we have a committee that was supposed to look
Yeah,
into
Bill
that?
and
That was
I.
Susan and I. we
they're
haven't
reporting
done it.
right
You guys
now,
ever
but,
got reported back to us?
We're gonna report.
okay, good.
If council would like, I will flip this to LED of similar temperature.
Susan and I will do a report.
But I mean, I thought there was a whole discussion about what fixtures, and it got into a black hole.
So where is the, is
Yeah,
there-
we are the black hole, and we need to.
We're the black hole. It's our
Okay,
fault.
so let's quit digging the hole and let's.
go on.
All right, so we've got the front arbor replacement. I think that
got to
Councilman
fall
Haney and
down.
I were doing pull-ups on that last year.
Got
and
to
still,
fall down. And again, let's consider better materials.
if we want to double the price, we could flash it all. But
We could use plastic wood.
plastic wood, I know what
Bill
you're talking
and
about.
Greg
It
should work
structurally
that
is
out.
better, but it's still half of what wood is. But I'll look into it. I'll look
American plastic
Greg,
lumber.
Okay,
Mayor, question?
Okay.
I'll
Greg,
send
did
you the link.
assess that? Did you assess
Send it to me too, okay.
Okay.
the actual supporting structures and how many feet on center? I think this thing was not engineered properly, looking at the differences in spans.
yeah, the SAG.
And I'm just wondering if in this budget, if there's something in there to try and correct that.
We were just going leg for leg.
Okay.
We're just holding up wisteria, no snow loads, so I'm not too worried about safety.
Okay.
It's just hanging up there. It might be a little deflection that wouldn't meet what you do in some structures, but yeah. So, speaking of low priorities, we've got the cemetery master plan shown there. That's been kicked along.
And that's the cemetery fund paying for that.
Yes. Yes, and you can see that off to the right, right? That again shows on the other funds, 22,000. It's a low priority. It should have a C there.
But it has its own funding source.
Yes.
And there's no
Again,
more,
that's like a no-brainer.
Yeah, we're running out of space, and there was the idea of generating new income with, by putting remains
wall.
in the wall.
Right. So we're looking at niche wall.
I think they call that a mausoleum, but yeah.
no,
Send them to Washington and compost them.
You've heard of
well, no,
remains
that's
of the
what-
day.
I
This is the
wanna-
remains of the
wanna
I'd buy
have
one of
an
those.
Ojai. I want to have an Ojai. No, I'm serious. Ojai needs a green burial plan because there are people, a lot of people in Ojai, they're going to get buried out in Oregon or somewhere under a tree.
Good.
There's a big green plan now. A
The
lot of people
world.
dispose of ashes at the cemetery. It's not 100% condoned, but people go over and spread ashes there all the time.
The state of Washington just legalized human composting.
I know. I was going to bring up.
Isn't
for
that
the park,
interesting?
Compost toilets.
Come on, guys.
We might all be a victim of that.
And we put that on.
Okay, we'll assign that to the committee here between, and,
No,
okay, moving
no.
right along. Greg.
Okay.
This is the future.
But the wall could generate, you could generate some money with that.
All right, so we'll put that under the other fund, other
Not,
income
not,
fund.
I'm just saying,
Compostable human
You said
remain
it. We
area
heard
at the
it.
cemetery.
Greg, next.
Okay, next on page 4, the arcade. We have, as mentioned, we're painting the arcade. You see the other fund source that is coming from the arcade plaza fund.
Special district fund.
Down below, you see under the drainage fund, we've got a couple projects shown. We have a mandate under an MS4 permit to start putting trash excluders in. We already have some. They're difficult in our area where we get a lot of these larger leaves. They can block and they cause problems, but we're
and you're gonna bring the RFP for the drainage study to us before you issue it?
Yes, yes. And that, that one, we were going to move it forward. It really has it's old. It's 79, right? So we're talking it's 40 years old. And,
It's part of a general plat component, really.
yeah.
And I'm just
we're trying to
saying is-
integrate that SWP study.
I'm just saying, we would just like to look at the scope before the RFP goes out on that, because
Well-
things have changed.
Yeah.
Randy?
I liked what you guys just said is, why aren't we using that money for something else and putting that, study into the general plan update when we do it? Why do we want to make this a standalone if it's a general plan issue?
I want to make an important clarification too on this, because the drainage study is it's meant to be floodwater control.
That's my point.
Well, that's a
And
different-
everybody's, I think there's a big
That's my
trend toward, similar to complete streets, to stormwater capture. Stormwater capture is about low flow. All of these new regulations and goals are to capture the first inch of runoff that's polluted and trying to infiltrate it. But the issue is when you get a major storm, you've got to have facilities to move it and get it off so we don't flood properties. So they're really two different areas, but we're going to try to integrate and
That's the
discuss
point.
how we can do those.
The move is towards integration, and that's what soft bottoming is about, where you are able to maintain infiltration in high flow periods without compromising your flood control, for example.
And
And that's
it's
retention
a developing
basins and all
art, it's a
sorts of
revolving art, yeah.
And that's in cooperation with the flood
But
control.
you can
district.
imagine that Fox Canyon channel coming by this skate park. I mean, it's a concrete wall, concrete floor.
Oh, it's moving.
You put in a permeable floor on that thing, and it's going to rip it to shreds when it's
Yeah, it'll scour it
But
out.
there's ways
Yeah.
that can be done. They're developing ways that
They're
put
developing
porous-
ways of handling that.
But it silts in like crazy, and the county has secured millions of dollars of grants in their parking lots, and they put in porous gutters and porous pavement, and they're spending a lot of money every year out using Vector trucks to
Trying to
clean the
flush
silt
them out
that
or
blocks
clean
them
them.
up and everything. So it's a developing art, and like you can even think of that huge Stewart Canyon debris basin up there. It's massive. It's got a 300 cubic yard capacity, and it's got a permeable floor in it, and it captures a lot of water. But they also want to move out that water when it's flooding. There's a spillway to move it, and it's going to be flooding.
And the flooding conditions have changed that much that we need a new study to determine the flooding conditions?
It has. I mean, the flooding since '79 has really brought up the average numbers you use to calculate floodwaters.
Really?
And that's
what is causing that?
It's statistics just on new data from what they've seen, all the heavy flooding in the 90s and 2000s. So if you look at also the main channels have a lot of growth in them as well. But even without the heavy growth, I mean, they used to bulldoze the
Okay,
San Antonio Creek.
yeah,
They used to bulldoze every year up to the mid-70s just to keep it clear. Now it's all natural growth, so it's got a lot of arundo and all native trees growing, or various trees in it. And then, but also the storms that we got in the 90s, they were huge, in 2005 and so on. They were all brought up what a 100-year flood is a lot more water. That's more likely than it used to be.
Well,
And what if it tells us it's 20% more? What's the solution?
Well,
Other than say, don't drive down here flooding during inclement weather.
I guess how it rolls back to this drainage plan is the master drain plan, the culverts will end up being, it's incremental, but it brings up the size of the culverts, and that means when develops like Mallory, bungalows or cottages and things come in, and they have drainage to deal with, they've got a current study to look at. The truth is,
okay.
for Mallory, for instance, we required an updated study for that particular area.
But also the thinking about channelization has fundamentally changed from 40, 50 years ago, where you don't just channelize. In fact, that can cause more flooding than
it moves faster.
yeah. So that it causes more problems in the
That's
downstream
why having
areas.
native shrubs out of
Right.
you know,
So
inflammatory
the whole
other than
thinking has
arundo.
changed about this.
It's true. Sometimes you can do it.
Captures it.
You're never going to put a natural channel back at Fox Canyon. It'd be very difficult. But downstream from here, it's natural and it's contained. And San Antonio Creek, they're talking about doing it on Los Angeles River in sections
Yes,
when you got a
exactly.
lot of room. But if you've already jammed it into this narrow, high-capacity channel, you can't kick it back out to lower flow that won't scour that native material.
Yeah.
There's a balance that has to be achieved.
Of course.
It's very difficult.
But it's a completely
So
different.
is your study going to be part of
The
that?
philosophy is very different than it was in '79.
Right, definitely.
Yeah.
And again, we're gonna have even, a greater flooding and shorter periods of time and more masses of water. So again, your plan has to evaluate that too.
For instance, all these stormwater capture devices, these curb extensions we put in, they're grabbing a small portion of the initial flow, but it's not going to affect the flood flow, be it insignificant amount. So you can do so to have the drainage study look at putting in all these minor stormwater captures. It's more of a best management stormwater capture plan. It's not going to affect the size of the flooding structures that are designed, but you could try to incorporate and use the study to help find ways to divert water and
Well, you know, it's
deal with it.
interesting, when you look at the two, you know, the different ways of capturing and going to permeable gutters and streets and roads, and then all of the maintenance that's required to remove the trappings versus the stormwater capture that we're doing right now. Again, it's minor, but it does catch, and aesthetically, it enhances the community. It really provides a strong character to who we are.
And also because we have perched aquifers just other than one bowl, it really enhances the landscaping and the trees. It helps the trees much more disproportionately
Right.
because of the perched aquifer structure.
And they all need to be weeded. Because I've been doing it, and you
Oh, hey,
guys
thank
have
you,
got to.
Yeah, I saw them out there weeding today.
Oh, I do it every
Firing.
day, but I try to do it when it rains because it's almost
Yeah.
impossible when this,
When it
you know, that
dries.
stuff dries
Pull
and,
those roots out.
what?
It's easier to pull those roots out.
You bet. Yeah, but if we don't, some of them, I'm serious, the ongoing maintenance Public Works can be faced with on all those, is substantial.
We need to create a neighborhood watch.
Anyway,
Neighborhood
I just interested in seeing an RFP when that goes out,
Okay,
just to read it.
what you're gonna learn from this study is the volumes and the flow, is that what the drainage study is gonna be about? Which is necessary whether you have permeable or impermeable, and it will tell both approaches what needs.
It's unusual. I've talked to quite a few consultants. They haven't gone there, but it'd be some new territory. We were planning to use the SWP study, the Sierra Watershed Progressive Group, to see if they can integrate it, and they've got that other substantial grant to see if we can work with them as
Well,
well.
there's also recharge wells that address some of the silting issues.
And as I think you've heard, that one up on the upper reach of San Antonio Creek is extremely difficult. They've had
The spreading ground,
Headache.
yeah.
They
that's
didn't
not-
design it right in the first place.
yeah.
well, they had all the
They
current.
designed it twice.
They had the
so-
ultimate pros designing
They didn't design
so
it right in the first place.
I'm not sure if the Public Works Department has any better designers on that stuff.
Yeah,
but
right.
yeah. so-
No, Bill, you
Yes.
should consult them with
Yes,
them
there
and get a fee
are.
for it.
But I
if
mean,
there's a
I
better
think,
way.
but I
Okay.
think the county spent a
You
lot
don't
of money
use
on that
silt water
design.
to clear silt screens.
Yeah. Okay,
That's what they did.
the,
It's an evolving art. I just want to say it's not
Evolving.
nailed down. It's
Okay,
How about
so-
a tank of clean water?
okay, so we're going to spend money to do a study on the floodwaters. It's really base data for a lot of later decisions, is that what it's about?
You know, we really have the right with these discretionary projects to require that they study it. So it's good for us to know and have all cities refer to it to a certain degree, but it's really about growing, expanding cities more than our built-out city.
Right, that's what I was trying to think of, what changed that brought this about. I mean, I know there are probably some neighborhoods.
It
where-
really tied in more because FEMA was coming in and they were doing a 100-year map for the city that put half the city under the floodplain. We challenged that floodplain study and pushed back on it, and they even backed off. They're not even going to do the floodplain
Reduced
map.
substantially.
And it reduced substantially. There's still an issue out of, I should call it the Mercer Channel out there, you know, as it goes up through that area. That was actually a target by the Ventura County Watershed Protection District, Flood Control District, was going to improve that. They actually did an initial plan. So that all is at flood risk, and it's a 100-year floodplain. It would have been put in the floodplain. It's not
But
now.
today's thinking is more thinking about retention basins rather than channelization, for example.
For instance, up there, you got to get that water out of there for flooding, but you could retain and try to infiltrate. And if you're familiar with those Freeman diversion areas out there off of 118 by Wells Road out in that area, I mean, those require. I mean, I used to run a landfill, and you'd go into scrapers and you scour off feet of silt, you know, and take them to landfill and use them for cover every few years. There's just a pile of silt going off there. So all those big diversion channels, we don't really have any easy area to put them. And
I'm just thinking, I'm talking about the thinking, the philosophy.
so the last category is the transit fund, and we have it's a project that we have
with other money,
You can see it's all other money.
other fund.
They're going to contribute to the paving of the parking lot, which is good. It's pretty beat in Public Works yard. And so we're putting a washdown pad as kind of a BMP as well. And then we've got a trolley. It's a lower priority, but we can improve the trolley stops as well with the CMAC fund as well. I think that had a 11% match on it. So I think that was it. And then if you look at this very last page, page 5 of 5, it's the revenue sources. And so if you go to column 1920, there's no money shown here. It's strictly other funding of sources. So TOT is 682 this year, contributing. The AB 939 is contributing 188,000. The drainage fund is 55,000 for that study we were just talking about. The gas tax all goes to roads. The rec fund is 200,000, and that was 100,000 of the Prop 168, and then remember that one off the cuff. There's some miscellaneous funds. There's some donation monies, and I think that's primarily at this point would be Ojai Civic Association, and that's our hope.
Mayor, one question.
Yeah.
Is the $6.99 on the gas tax, is that a 2-year savings? Is that a 2-year accumulation or a 1 year?
It's a one-time amount of money from Prop 68, you were saying?
Is that the gas tax?
22.
Oh, gas tax.
fund?
The money on the gas tax, it goes into a separate fund, and it accumulates for however long it is until we need it for specific projects, and then we pull it out as we need it. So this is a multi-year accumulation, yes.
So the question is, if we take the $6.99, what's the balance in that fund?
We're taking that
All right
close
now.
to zero.
Pretty much reduces what we're anticipating in that fund to be close to zero.
Okay.
So I think the other funds shown there, there's a little bit of, it's TDA Article 3 used to be a great grant opportunity for Complete Streets projects, which is VCTC has stopped that project, and we still have some, I guess, a wrap-up category down there. CMAC, ATP, STP grant all rolls into one. It's $750,000 this year coming from there. But you can see the total revenue, $3 million. So if we look back, I think the better sheet to look is sheet 4 of 5. If you look at the very bottom in that detailed area, we have 2.2 million from other funds, and then 979,000 coming
That's the
from.
chart right above you.
Fund 31.
Yeah, that's the chart right
Right.
above you. Great.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So I think that's it. If you have any other
Okay,
questions,
this is all capital improvement, not capital equipment. Is that right?
vehicles and equipment are separate. We were going to do that
Next, right?
quickly next.
Do we want to go to that, or we want to hash any of this, or what do you want to do with this?
Well, yeah, what's the council's pleasure?
I thought we hashed as we went.
Yeah, so did I. We made hash out of it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I was gonna suggest we digest this and put in our, communicate our notes, by email, that we have
Well,
on
that
that.
doesn't help him. He needs direction, and it can't come from one person. It's gotta
No,
come from
I
the
understand that, but,
So are we saying that we should have another meeting and just to go over, just to discuss that aspect?
Well, are there, what items came out of this that we want to change?
The one that I heard was the possibility of doing the lighting instead of the dais and
Yeah.
the curtains, which we can.
forget the curtains and the dais and gets the lighting fixed up.
Yeah, and we talked about that last year, so we can make
And
that change.
Susan and I need to
the
get our
plan.
report in.
I didn't hear any other major changes.
Okay,
And just quickly on that, we're talking new fixtures. That was the hang-up, right? Yeah. You got to go to some historic type of fixture or something like that, right?
Well,
Or do you just want to go to
we're gonna do a
LED?
report.
Okay, you guys have a subcommittee.
there's gonna be money in there to do something about the lights, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm saying we would just designate those funds for council chamber improvements
Yeah,
and.
Yeah, just general
Right.
improvement.
then bring it back.
Chambers
What
improvement.
is it the glare? What is the issue?
The yellow and the glare, that I get all kind of complaints from people
Yeah,
about the
I
yellow
do
and
too,
the glare.
because there's some people who, they get a headache.
They get a headache.
I used to get a headache, but I think I've gotten used to it, but it's still,
Okay, well,
There's all colors and lights in these as well, but yeah, and LED's got,
This is a
they have,
3,000
if we want to make it easy, we'll put LED tubes in a more moderate, lower temperature, will be a bit more yellow, be a little more moderate. You can't see quite as well, but it's a
Which
little
then
less
would- well,
intense.
Okay, new fixtures would give you inherent dimming control that you could set up on motion sensor and daylight sensors.
And that's the hang-up. If you go to fixtures, do you want to
Okay,
go
so
to
your
historic?
committee will go to work
We're
with
gonna
the
work-
staff
And we'll-
on
we'll
what we want to put in.
Reflect that in here.
There are usually two issues. One is like full spectrum lighting in order to be able to read and to
Right.
be easy on the eyes. And the other is glare. Now, glare can come from any number of fixtures, so I hope that whatever we do, if we're going to spend money to improve it, I hope we improve it, because I think,
Well, Susan and I will study this.
yeah.
Here, I have one
Okay.
one request
Randy.
if we're gonna do any of this,
Maybe Roger Conrad.
Yeah.
Randy's up, please, guys.
The park funding area, we had talked about the pergola timber replacement, and Bill has suggested an alternative pricing on different materials.
Just a lower life cycle cost.
Okay, so all I'm trying to say is, if we could substitute something in there maybe for some type of a pricing for the renovation of this asphalt area for pickleball courts, and see what the funding levels would be for either one, and then bring it back to council and
Yeah.
let us weigh, do we want to do timber or do we want to do pickleball? I think that'd be a
Well,
good.
maybe we want to put off milling of Lower Libby and do a pickleball court.
Right, so I would just like to throw that in there.
So that would be an overlay on the
Yeah.
clay, whatever, no, it's an old asphalt
Yeah.
court over here at City Hall.
Just
right?
give us a idea what that would cost.
An overlay and striping.
Okay.
So you're talking about the parking lot, at the Lower Liver parking lot compared to this?
No, we know what
But
that.
he's
we know
wanting to know what is the
Lower Libby
price to
I'll give you an
overlay or
example.
resurface.
Like a price for this.
Oh,
About
you-
20 grand.
okay.
Yeah.
What's the price for this?
So we're not swapping something in what we've got
We don't know.
here.
We may. Who knows?
Okay, got it, got
I'm
it.
just saying, right now, we just want a price.
Right,
We don't know what we're gonna do, but we need a price.
okay, perfect. That's all I have.
Suppose we Seth got one, yeah.
Okay, is there any other things with regard to this particular phase of the discussion? Because we,
Okay, are we
okay,
going into?
if not, we move to,
Equipment.
I think just ballpark, we're saying, I think the, whatever, the Parks and Rec manager, Sophocles, got an estimate from somebody for in the ballpark of 60,000 for a asphalt overlay with striping on it.
I'd rather that come from you than him,
Okay.
frankly.
well, Mayor, I know we can't depend on Wikipedia, but the internet generally says that resurfacing of a tennis court is, $15,000-$20,000. So whatever,
Okay.
if you can get an estimate, that's great.
Yep, I'll do that.
We're not looking for post-tension concrete.
Right,
Right.
we're not, yeah, no. And if you can mill it and overlay for pickleball, can you do
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
What would mill and overlay be for that, right out there?
Okay, I'll check on that.
Okay, so we're on Fund 33, Mayor?
Was there any other comments on the Fund 31 on the CIP?
I think we've.
Well, I just,
Go
I would
ahead.
hope the committee looks at all the different things regarding this room that could be potentially improved
Yeah.
and not narrowly. It's time for this room to get a
Well,
facelift.
we're,
Yeah, there are people working on the curtains.
We'll do that.
From the historic.
We could
I know the
reactivate the fireplace.
HPC brought it
you know?
up too, I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
didn't,
yeah.
I'll wait for you guys to come back, but I.
right, dancing lights.
Well, someone said pink walls makes it a more passive environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should look at what the prisons are doing.
What is the deal on the curtains? That's a
I
big.
came out of a pink.
You know, before, it was years ago, somebody
Very
made a
passive.
complaint about the curtains being bragging.
Yeah, you know,
What?
I'm not
Yeah.
into the curtains are fine with me, but
and
if
this
other
dais
people
is
wanna do
fine,
it-
you know, I mean, I don't know.
I like the
Yep.
fine art we bring in.
Well, it's always behind my head. The mayor put me over here, so now everybody,
Yeah.
you know.
And then I stand behind you. for the
Yeah,
picture.
Okay,
Okay.
so we're on 1 of 6?
Right, even the dais, some people used to complain about it, but I don't know. I haven't heard
Ah.
complaints in
Oh, the
years, really.
dais.
Really? People complain about the curtain?
Yeah, I think we went through and used a little marker on it, cleaned up some of the chips missing and things,
I
but,
think people do want to cheer the place up a bit, that's the point.
I'm concerned about how close they are to us.
But the people,
Well, Susan and I will come out of the black hole and, do some research.
okay, if you guys are gonna be the interior designers, I thought this was sort of historic and quaint.
Well, we're
Let's
just talking
leave it
about
that
lights.
way. and
Even
get on.
HPC thinks it needs a facelift, so.
Yeah.
some
yeah.
people got into the chairs,
Never
that
wanna
the
change
chairs were
anything.
uncomfortable and all that stuff too, yeah, so.
Really?
Do you think that you guys
Somebody
can
needs to
handle
go out and walk the streets to see what we need to spend
Oh,
some
yeah.
money.
No, I just
We're
want
gonna
to
do
go walk my
pictures or
dog.
something.
Okay, if there's nothing more on the capital,
Ask the mayor.
Is it okay for me to leave?
yes, it's
Okay,
fine.
thank you.
Okay,
Equipment.
all right,
You have permission, we still have a quorum.
if
Okay.
everybody could go to attachment B, page 1 of 6. This is the recap sheet, which is somewhat similar to the CIP recap sheet. And if you go to the third column, you'll see fiscal year 19.
Let me make a quick comment on this first before we go in. This sheet here includes 3 different sections. The top section is equipment and technology specifically. The second section is vehicles and rolling stock. And then the third one down at the bottom is a sum total of the other 2 sections.
So total Fund 33 is the sum of the first 2.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
365?
So this is really supposed to cover vehicles, equipment, and technology,
Okay.
everything that we have. And as a recap, all right, so starting up on top for equipment and technology. For revenues, the first row, you'll see 40,710 coming in per year. That comes from the general fund. That was an allocation set up a few years ago, more recent than the CIP allocation from TOT, as a way to fund long-term to assure we're keeping up-to-date in equipment and technology as well as vehicles. So vehicles got a similar thing, but it's closer to 62,000. So you can see some grant revenue coming in, for instance, at 30,000. That's the second half of the APCD grant that the mayor and Steve Colomay secured for the landscaping equipment. And then we've got 20,000 coming in from other funds. That's the PEG fund. And then, so if you look under IT expenditures, we're proposing spending 65,000 this year, and that's where we've got an ending fund balance of a positive balance. We're doing well there. We're trying to keep updating. I think our IT pro, James Hahn, has done a great job kind of juggling and building the system over the years he's been here, but we're really trying to build the resilience, and it's taken some effort to look at what components we build to improve that resilience. For instance, even the PEG channel and all that to get it, it's a bunch of little pieces.
Have we exhausted the PEG fund?
No.
So that's being funded by the PEG fund?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, Randy?
So the question is, I remember this coming up last year, and we talked about the storage facility that all your electronics are being put in. Is there any budget to upgrade that, or
Yes.
create a cleaner room or a?
And I know there was some discussion that, we'll get to that in detail, but essentially there's a fire suppression system proposed for it. I know there were some people that thought we should put it to a new building or a new area, but that's not in the works. I mean, right now we're looking at cabinetry over all of the server systems with a carbon dioxide kill system that will put out a fire if it ever did start down there. So
Now, is that, in a way, the nerve center of our local communication system?
Right.
yes.
Have you
How
been
safe
there?
is that? Yeah, I have been there. That's why I hesitated to call it the nerve center, but anyway, but it is where everything comes through and is controlled,
Yes.
right?
In fact,
Okay, and-
just to highlight, we just built a fiber optic system all the way through the park and up into the plaza, and that's been very
Okay,
helpful.
and
In
so-
fact, it just caught a few criminals.
So are there any issues around, I don't recall inspecting the building, but it seems like it's sharing a building with other stuff that's stored. From a standpoint of a risk management and disaster preparedness, do we have a risk assessment on that as to what?
I don't think we have a risk assessment.
Well, and I think the biggest risk is actually the one that Greg was talking about. The immediate fix we wanted to hit was the fire suppression system, which is something before coming here, we went through a multi-million-dollar server room upgrade at a prior city, and they spent about $1 million on just fire suppression. So obviously here we're able to do it on a lot lower cost, but it's a carbon dioxide fire suppression system.
So it's a
That's
dry,
probably- Yeah.
No, I think it's gas. I think it's cabinetry that seals out,
Yeah.
injects in, kills the fire that could
words-
start.
yeah,
If the alarm goes, the human needs to get out.
yeah, or it'll go with all
I mean,
along.
that's why you just can't hit the
You'll
whole
be
room.
snuffed right
Yeah,
along
that
with the
wouldn't be
fire,
too good.
okay.
Yeah, if you burn to death, you'll clearly suffocate.
I had a vision of a fire sprinkler right in the center of it.
You don't have to
Coming
worry
on,
about
and
smoke
then I went,
inhalation.
"That's not
You won't-
good."
But
Okay,
that's something that Greg and I talked about, and we knew needed to be done now. I think we do have some ideas for longer term, and we'd love to really upgrade that
The
facility.
estimated cost of that, is that in here?
Yeah, it's in there,
Yeah.
$25,000.
Okay,
I
good.
think it was 35,000.
Yep, it's in that zone. I forgot to look at the
Yeah.
detail.
Yeah, you got 15.
We'll run through it.
Other than physical threats, are we analyzing for other security? Because obviously it's a huge problem right now with malware attacks. and
Yeah,
ransoms.
one of the advantages physically, without giving away the location of it, is if people expect it to be when
Oh,
they
I
attack
see.
and
Oh, it's
vandalize
30
a
over
building
2
like
years.
this,
Takes 2 years to do
it's
that?
nice to have it tucked away where people don't know where it is.
Yeah.
So
What about, I mean, but other than physical, what about digital intrusion? I mean,
that is being
Baltimore
beefed
shut
up
down right now. Small
just-
cities across the country are getting ransomed.
Yeah, we're stepping up the malware and the what do you call it, more the defense system, and we're working with a company called All Connected, and we've allocated monies for them to continue working with us to try to review the system, and they just finished a significant review of it. It was about a $7,000 review of the system we had budgeted for this present
That's not
year.
a CIP item, that's coming out of the city manager's allocation. Where's this money coming from to do this?
It's from the IT set aside we do annually.
It was from the
$40,000.
IT budget, yeah.
You're
There-
making him nervous.
There are a few of these overall, one type things that are actually included in this, the equipment budget here. You know, when we're talking about, upgrading firewalls, upgrading the suppression system, upgrading the security down there, those kind of things, those are paid for out of this fund.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we don't
Have
think
we done
so
a-
much about fire that we neglect.
Have we done a
digital
risk
intrusion.
assessment of our attic and basement? I was kind of shocked walking up into the attic.
We actually
We even
had,
have alarms up there.
No, we had an inspection
we had
today.
an inspection
Wait a
today.
minute, Bill was in the attic and nobody shut the door and locked it?
Didn't tell me when he would be up there, or I would have taken care of that.
We actually had an inspection today, and I'm going to get a list of recommendations from them.
Yeah.
From
Bill, this was
Fire
the attic, you were in
inspection.
our attic here? What were
Yeah.
you doing in there?
It's
He haunts the place.
an education.
Okay, yeah, they,
every inch, I'll give you that.
It's classic old school. I mean, it's got a staircase that goes up to it and everything,
Yeah.
too.
Oh, yeah, it's historic.
Sure.
It's really nothing more than just access to the HVAC ducts, really. I mean, I guess there's some junk up there, but yeah.
Don't tell that to the Art Commission.
Oh,
they're out of there
Historic
now, though.
Preservation Commission.
there's
It's
some
all
art
junk.
stuff up there.
It's all
Okay.
junk.
Yeah.
So onward and upward to Fund 33. That'd be page 2 of 6 on the attachment B. We don't normally print to this level of detail, but we did, so we'll,
I have a question on page 5 of 6 especially.
We're on page 2 of 6, though.
I'm sorry.
Okay, continue, Greg.
this page 2 of 6 is extremely detailed. We normally roll this up, but there's a lot of workstations, and I think we all know that the present day office workforce is highly dependent on computers and having efficient computers. So
How old are the ones we have?
this is a significant upgrade on all the
Well,
computers.
how old is the ones we have?
The way James has these, he's using the same cabinets and bringing up, the processors and the memory. So there's a big upgrade this year. A lot of this
Yep.
stuff is in the age
But
of 5 years.
It's
How many?
generally a 5-year.
5 years?
5-year
5-year
replacement
replacement
schedule.
cycle.
And we running Windows?
Yes.
What Windows version are we running?
We're up to just went over a new current one
We
last
just
year.
upgraded. I lost track. Is it 10 now? Is
We're
that
up to
what-
10?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About 5-year-old equipment, and we're running Windows 10.
Yep.
Okay, all right.
So the equipment's a little bit old. And then we've, so up top you can see we've got, well, this has been talked about for a while, is updating the document software. It's called Fortis, so there's some talk about another one. We have Fortis right now. It's not the greatest system. There's some talk by this document manager and city manager about going to a different system. So it's working now, but it's some difficulty responding to the public records requests and things like
Well, it's
that.
actually, Fortis is actually going out of operation, so it's kind of forcing
That
us
would
to
make
upgrade.
sense to go somewhere.
Bring it in WordPerfect.
Yeah.
This includes, yeah, let's do that. Let's do the 8-inch drives, Word Perfect.
And
yeah.
Lotus 1, 2, 3. We can really go.
But
Do we have scanning capability for archiving old records?
Well, our
in-house?
copiers scan and they can be flipped into that system.
Yeah.
But we don't have a dedicated scanning system.
When we scan blueprints, we send them all out to a.
Okay.
So we had a scanner that was used for a lot of these purposes, which is because of the issues that we have the Fortis system going away. Then we're actually looking at bringing in a new system. This part on the top here
A searchable
is
file system from the
yeah.
scanned documents.
This part on the top is servers for these particular things, for that and for also the finance software needs a
Right.
new server. And so we have two pieces. One is the software and one is this piece right here. We're looking at this, and we're also in the process of negotiating a new lease for the copier system. And the hope is that we will be able to get this and then build a bridge between the two, the copier, so that we can actually scan and index and
And have
do
it be
those kind of things.
searchable, so the deputy city
Correct,
clerk doesn't
exactly.
have to look through
Yeah.
manual files in the
Right.
basement.
And that's the goal, is that we're working on an integrated
Which she's
thing.
very good at, but still
But-
not a good use
but
of labor.
I don't like going in that basement.
Yeah.
Okay, Greg, back to you.
All right, so the next section, which really is called workstations, so these are all the individual workstations. We normally would roll them up by department, but really it's upgrading all of those computers, as well as supplying directors for each department a laptop that they could get more done. Some of us use, the EOC had some old laptops provided through a grant about 7 years ago or 8 years ago, and we're using those, and they're very outdated and not working too well at home now. So it was a way to kind of promote productivity with the directors of departments as well with a laptop.
What's the cost of the laptop? Is that 900 I'm looking at?
They're $2,000, I think, for laptops, and $900 for upgrading the existing workstations at each place.
$2,000 for a laptop?
I think it's a budget. I'm not sure what they actually are. James is pretty good about nailing those things tight. Yeah.
Nice ones.
He can build the
$750
workstations, but he
you
can't
get a
build a
top-of-the-line
laptop, I
laptop.
don't think.
Well,
you know.
some of that includes software, not just the components as well. So it's a complete package, and that's just the budgeted estimate. Anything that's not used stays in this fund for future use of other technology.
I was just
so.
wondering, I just got a really high-end laptop for like $675.
Yeah.
High end, did you say?
High-end.
Yeah.
Really?
So
It's got more bells and whistles than I know what to do with, but
Yeah, but you're not gaming
I
with it.
just paid $1,500 for one.
I know, I was gonna say, high end,
And
I
it
don't think you're
wasn't the
getting
highest end, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. High end would be like,
It-
yeah,
And there is a difference between home use versus tying into the city system and everything. So
and using legal software and all that.
yeah.
Yeah, well,
hey, it went over.
Arg! That's a,
Come on, Greg, you got one in. What? Tell me.
He made a comment about
I've
it.
been very nice to you.
No, I know.
There you are.
We're even.
There you are, huh? So elbows.
All right, network infrastructure, that's the fire suppression system we're talking about. James was trying to get headway this year.
We already started on it.
Well, yeah, there actually isn't much installed. I thought he had a contractor that was supposed to be underway, but, and then we've got the fiber optic that's done. It was mostly paid with the COPS grant. So that was put all the way from the IT office area through the lower park, through the upper park, and then it was point to point across the street over in the plaza. So it's great. We've got all these,
We opened up the COPS grant to include some of these other things
yes.
by council resolution, so.
Oh, I see, okay.
And we changed, it was limited just to the 2 labor costs, and we changed the wording on that to allow equipment support.
Nice, because that paid for a lot of that
So
work.
why don't we look at using the COPS for that, some of that?
I think it was practically entirely
No, I mean
funded.
for this year.
Okay,
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's why we did that.
And to that point, we've actually been able, recently, we actually caught somebody committing some vandalism through the cameras, and they were able to identify him from that. So it's serving the purpose of the
Yeah.
COPS grant.
When I look at your, Mayor, can I,
sure.
when I see your overall budget, I see Public Works having a budget, and I see, Finance having one, and I see the city manager's office having one. But our stepchild is always Rec and Parks. I don't see anything for any upgrades there. Am I reading this wrong?
2021, there's a few on page 3 of 6.
Some of their workstations were upgraded more recently, and so being that this is a 5-year replacement schedule, this is where people are. And if they were upgraded within the last 4 or 5 years, they're not going to be on the schedule for the current year. So that's
And do you consider the part-time person who does the hours for Recreation and Parks part of the finance department, or is she part of the Recreation and Parks?
the folks in the office at Recreation and Parks and Rec.
Right, doesn't.
Those are all part. There's a part of recreation staff.
But don't you have one person over there that actually just does nothing but hours and
No,
what's her? I'm
Vicky?
Christy.
yeah,
Vicky or Christie?
Christy does a lot of the front office work for them, the administrative stuff for the Parks and Rec department. But no, they're all part of the Parks and Recreation department.
Okay.
But But it's a good point that the new manager may be interested in a laptop. I think the present one wasn't, and maybe the new one would be more interested. It's kind of usually the directors and so on land up doing a lot of this work at home. I'm not sure if they will there. So we could add that if you're supportive of that.
But once again, I'll make a point. We're not into spending money for money's sake. We're spending money where money is required for things. So we tried not, just because we have some money doesn't mean we're necessarily going to buy anything.
We're also just gonna drop it in, and if we spend it, we spend it. If we don't, we'll debate that.
Yeah.
But hopefully that new rec director will be online,
Well-
and we might be able to ask him or her if they have any needs, and if they do, we'll let them come and talk to us about it.
Right.
Well, the city manager would come and talk to us about it, I would hope.
Well, that's what I meant.
The fund has the money, so if we budget it and didn't use it, great. Otherwise, so we'll look at that as well as that director, because if they were gung-ho to do more of the stuff at home, terrific. I think down below we have the phone system needed a new server and software package. The one we're using is going to, I'm sorry, it's not this fiscal year. It was next year that it goes out of date. So we've got that budget next year. And then we've got the AV system, audiovisual system here, being rebuilt within city council chambers by PEG money.
What's the problem with the one we have?
There's some, James knows much more of the details of that, but there are certain components that if we replace it, it will increase the resiliency in trying to get out those glitches we occasionally have broadcasting the system,
All right.
broadcasting on a channel 10.
That's PEG money.
Yes.
Okay.
As long as it's PEG, as long as it's channel 10. Technically, if it's Granicus and all that, I don't think it qualifies.
There's a debate about that.
If it did, it would help. Yeah.
Yeah, we looked into that, and I think we addressed that here. So I don't remember the resolution offhand, but
All right.
A question on the software. Is this where software and new programs and things are budgeted as opposed into the operating budget?
This is generally where implementation, like for instance, the community development software for building and planning that we installed this year for the Excella,
Yeah.
the cost of implementation was paid out of here, but the annual maintenance fees are paid out of the operating
Okay,
department.
but so a new program or a new feature comes from this?
The implementation does, but
Right,
but
okay,
not
so-
but not the ongoing.
I'll be more
cost.
specific. In the finance department, when the Budget and Finance Committee talked about budget control and cash flow real time, and I believe your report is that you had to do too much manual work, and that there would be software or programs that would handle that. Is there anything in the budget for this?
That did not get included in this particular budget here.
And is there any estimated as to what it would cost to have that?
I'm in the process actually of trying to figure that out. We were just made aware that there's a new module in our existing Springbrook software, and tomorrow I'm having a conference call and a video presentation on that particular software.
Okay, so we
for the
don't know
budget.
yet, and it isn't in this budget, but I would
Correct.
encourage you to pursue that, because if it's not a great deal of money, that would easily pay for itself
Right.
and give the manager and the finance department a way of holding departments accountable. Right now, how does a department know where they are when it comes to real time? And you would on the big capital projects, but like our recreation programs that can be fairly flexible as to what's offered, if they're recovering their cost, I'm less concerned, but if we're losing it by the unit, I'd like to know what the volume is.
Yeah, and one of the issues when we have the new recreation manager on board, we're going to be working with them and helping them to understand how to access that information that is available right now, because some of it is available.
Oh, okay, that's good.
But there are other areas where it does require a significant amount of manual work, and so we're actually addressing that currently.
Okay, good, thank you.
We just don't have the dollars in the budget because we weren't sure of the amount.
Okay, thank you.
On that note, I was going to go to attachment B, page 5 and 6. That's the 11 by 17s. So this is the detail of what equipment, because that's the,
Do we go over 4 or 6?
I think there's really not any information there. It's really just, there's no budgeted information beyond that.
Other than it has a summarization of what's in the vehicle
It's the same thing on that first cover sheet, Winner, but so to go to page 4 of 6, the 8.5 by 11, you can see 1920, no further budgeting. You can see the money coming in from 20,000 from PEG, 40,000 from the general fund, 30,000 from APCD grant that we talked about. And so that's the total of $90,000 of revenue coming into the fund this year. And you can see the next section is about vehicle replacement that
Are we on page 5 of 6 of B now?
On page 4 of 6, I thought.
Well, I went back to 4 for a second
Went
just to
back
make
to
sure.
4.
So
Yeah.
your IT and equipment replacement is 48,000 for this year, 48,392?
That's for the current fiscal year that we're in. Next fiscal year, which is
1920,
that's the
65.
65,000.
Okay. And then underneath it, grants and other revenues is your funding, which is 90,000, so there's a
That's
total of 25,000 left over in this funding cycle in that
Correct.
area.
That's correct.
So as Mayor Johnson said, if you sourced this additional equipment that you needed, technically there's a small amount of money to be used.
That's correct.
Not to mention the fund has an overall balance that's higher than that as well.
Yeah.
What's the existing?
The carryover. That was in that sheet 1 of 6, attachment B.
The estimated fund balance available at the end of fiscal year 1920 is $94,000 for the equipment and technology piece of it.
All right. On that note, we'll go to the 11 by 17 sheet, page 5, sheet 5.
Just a quick question, understanding this. The years on these, I mean, some of the, that's not the years of the, is this an inventory of the current equipment?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that's, okay, and just a quick question. We're showing estimated expenditures for 2019. Is that to replace a fairly new vehicle? Like under crew vehicles,
So
2018 Ford F-150 4x4 pickup, and it shows a $27,102 in 2019?
some of these are replacing older vehicles and the
Yeah, so what are they
the
replacing?
newer, these are the old pickup trucks that have been taken off of the schedule, and some of these numbers have not been corrected.
Referring to the 20.
Yeah, no, I see that.
I thi-
We're
I think-
not
I'm
replacing
just saying,
20
if this is an inventory, technically it's showing that you're replacing a 2018 vehicle.
Correct. That's-
I think we did replace it, and last year when we budgeted and approved this, we showed the one we're replacing. Now that it's already been surplused out, this is part of the fleet. All we're showing for this year, 2020, is an extra piece of equipment for that truck, the
Well, this year-
$2,800.
Okay, 2020, okay, so 2020 is the 2019, 2019 is
Yes.
1819.
We'll start.
Okay.
Up
So
there it
2020,
says that,
these
but
are
we
fiscal
had.
year ending numbers, not fiscal, okay.
That's correct.
I got it. I was confused.
I'll-
Now I'm not-
I'll
now
change
I'm
those
not
labels up
confused.
there. Yeah.
And so, yeah. and
Now
so-
I'm not confused.
So for that $27,000 vehicle we purchased in
That's
the current year.
1819.
That's correct, and then we have $2,800
I was confused
left
with the
to
header
work
when
on.
it said 2019.
Okay. Yes.
Okay,
I'll change that label. Thanks.
okay, all right.
So if we can start up a few lines from where you were, we're in the column says 2020, which I'll make say fiscal year 2019-20.
My mistake, you know.
It says it up there, but it's kind of lost a little bit. So really, what we're talking about is we have an existing older Bobcat, and we're purchasing $22,000 worth of tools for it. The bucket's hammered, so it's a new bucket, a new grinder head, a new power broom. Those 3 components, I believe, is what we're talking about. And by doing that, we'll make that tool usable. And what we're really building here, and these components shown, is some tools that we can go out and maintain our own parking lots and do better maintenance on our streets with.
We think we can do that cheaper in-house than contracting.
Yes.
How many hours is on this Bobcat?
It doesn't have heavy hours. Let me see if it shows there.
And this is
It's
tools,
rolled
not-
up. I can't see off the cuff, but it's just super low. We don't use it because it doesn't have decent tools on it.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I'm just saying, I have a skid steer. I've got 23,000 hours on it, which is nothing, but it's pretty beat up. So I don't know if I would be investing in a piece of equipment that's old and that used with all of this new equipment, which grinding or hammering or things of that nature is even gonna be more wear and tear. I'm just throwing that
All
out
right,
there, Greg.
I hear you. And now that we went through some discussions on this, and our thought process is these tools can flip to a new Bobcat if we have to go there. So if we're really using it and really beating it, you'll see it show up on capital improvement. I'm sorry, the vehicle replacement plan in a
So
couple of
that's your
years.
853 loader, that's what I'm seeing here, the Bobcat
The Bobcat,
1989?
yeah, right.
Oh, it's old.
You can tell by the model number, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the year, 1989, yep.
Randy got married on one of those, actually.
Okay, so the next line is a slurry trailer, and this is essentially we've tried cab jobbing things, but really getting a slurry trailer with a mixer on it will allow us to pick up and place slurry for our parking lots. And if we do slurry treatments on our parking lots, they'll hold up great.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it should be done every 3 years.
Should be.
Where do you pick up the slurry?
Generally at Western Oil Spreading.
Is that Saticoy?
Santa Paula,
Santa Paula?
yeah. The next one is the pothole trailer. We're looking at a trailer. It's fairly expensive, but it has a heater system on it with a timer. So you can buy hot AC, and you can have it, leave it in the trailer, and you can have that thing kick on at 3 in the morning and heat up the load of AC. Now when you fill potholes, it's not cold patch that falls apart quicker.
Gotta be hot. I
Yeah.
mean, really, it's not even worth doing.
I thought that was a joke, but okay, right, yep.
Just a quick question regarding insurance on this equipment, not on the equipment, but on the people operating it. You know, we're increasing a chance of someone really getting hurt by using material like this.
Yeah.
Does that increase our insurance policy? How are we gonna properly train our people?
I'm quite confident it won't increase the rate because it is very protected equipment. It's not old school where you're exposed to burners and all that. I mean, now with OSHA and other requirements, this is highly covered, but we are going to go through the training, but it's pretty locked out. I mean, you've got an LPG tank on it with a heater system, but it's got to meet current APCD exhaust
I'm just
requirements.
talking about the difference between cold patch and hot patch is night and day.
Yeah, but cold patch doesn't last.
I understand that.
Right.
I'm not against the process.
Yeah.
What I'm looking at is the number of employees that we have. How many are gonna be trained? How many of them might be thrown on something like this? And what's the risk in actually providing the service versus having someone do the service for us?
Yeah.
Our experience with the contractor is very expensive. We just kill our budget in a flash. Yeah, we'll be able to get a lot more done with the crew. I guess on the good side, we don't have that many guys to train, so we can train what we have and be careful with it. And
I think to answer your question though is between now and when we adopt the budget, I'll contact our insurance agency and see if that is an issue. We typically run through all the we give them a property schedule of all of our properties and our equipment. So we have a quote based on what we have, but I can see if that would be something that would trigger something.
You know, it's like like in my insurance, if you step on a ladder, your rates go up considerably. If you're working over 6 feet tall, your rates go up considerably. Look at what a roofer pays for insurance versus anyone else. Look at what a person hot mopping or slurry sealing a roof pays.
Oh, I know, yeah.
That's all I'm trying to say is you're dealing with
Calculate that
products
in.
that can hurt you quicker and faster.
Just calculate
versus-
that, yeah.
That's all. I'm just speaking out loud.
And just to highlight, our new maintenance supervisor has a lot of experience in this area, and that's kind of what we're really going from a cold patch to a hot patch system. And
Okay.
crack filling, you'll see, is the next item.
Do hot crack too?
We're talking about hot crack filling as well.
Okay.
So it's common in cities, but I agreed we need to make sure we're properly trained and being careful with it.
But it's better to do
Is
it right.
is the fact that we have this much and this kind of specialized equipment in a town as small as we are, is this relate to, one, the condition of our roads, which are deteriorated, and the distance we are from the major market for contracting? It just seems strange
Well,
to me
I think
that
you'll find for this kind of maintenance activity that we've had a contractor do crack fill. It's very hard to get a decent quote, and it burns up money so fast. I mean, you might notice that from the police department here back down towards Montgomery Street before the mayor lived on the street.
Yeah.
We went through and filled rubber
Oh,
cracked
yeah,
it.
right.
It burned up, $8,000 in a
Right, but I mean, that kind of goes to what happens when your streets all start falling apart.
right.
Because you want to seal them so they don't end up pumping water after the rains.
Yeah.
And then fall apart. So I understand why we need to do it, but I mean, this is one of the risk that Randy is bringing up is another one of the consequences of us falling further and further behind on this, so, okay.
It is tricky, Ben. If
Yeah, but-
this really builds us a great parking lot maintenance,
Yeah, if we could regularly slurry, we could really extend the life of our,
yeah, I mean, and it's
surfaces.
expensive. We're looking at a cycle, it's a lot of money. We had a small contractor, when it was closer to the recession, that would work with us and bring us equipment and work as a team with our crew and get it done. And we did a lot of these as a team with them, but the prices kept going up. and
We're
it's
talking
very-
about slurry seal now?
Slurry and crack, yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
mean,
So-
you really can't extend, if you keep up with it, it extends the life.
So Mayor, we're looking at roughly $88,000 of new equipment purchase just for this activity. So the question that would come back to, I hear all the benefits, and I'm not saying there aren't. So the question then is, with a small staff and a small community like this, how often do we see ourselves on this equipment and actually performing these tasks in conjunction with maintaining our parks and all the other stuff that we're doing? I'm just trying to look at the two, saying, is this a good investment? And
I think our goal is to have the same similar schedule for pothole filling that we have now, but it'll be a high-quality pothole fill when we do it. And then we are going to step up. I mean, right now, we're only doing potholes once every 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll still do that, but we're talking about adding a crack filling cycle in there as well, so of a day.
So you
every-
actually have a designated time frame that you actually go out and dedicate a crew to go pot to?
We try. I won't say it's not often diverted to other special work, but yeah, we try to keep on that 3-week schedule.
And we're gonna you think this will allow us to get a slurry seal schedule on all our parking lots?
Yes.
Which we probably
Well,
don't
once you
have now.
slurry, then you have to come back and stripe. Is
We
this-
have a little bit.
Oh,
we
you have to
just-
slurry and stripe, yeah.
Yeah, is the striping, do you have a striping machine in here, or do we already own one?
We do, but a lot of those parking lots, sometimes we do sub that because these guys flash it out for a cheap price.
Right. And then we make.
And the ADA,
Yeah, they gotta do the ADA upgrades on the striping.
right.
And what does the county do for all this?
The
We
county
ever-
they've got, pothole filling and crack filling. You might have seen Creek Road. They went through, they
Yeah.
spent forever.
Is that an
crack filling
option
that
to,
years
to pay the county?
It's not cheap. They've
They-
got,
they're-
like
they-
whenever we even hire the county now, they charge us overtime rate for any work
Oh,
we request
geez.
for them and stuff. Well, I think they're just saying, hey, our work's priority because they were starting to impact their work and they said, hey, we're charged overtime.
Okay.
So you have a striping machine, it looks
That's
like
for
in
staff
this,
time.
or is that a aerator?
The aerator's a backup. We have a good relationship with Ojai Unified School District, and they let us borrow it, but there was some concern that they might not replace it and so on. So it's in the budget. I don't think we'll use it, but it's in the budget.
And you're correct.
Is that a pull behind, or is that a
It's,
walk behind?
it's puller.
So just to clarify, before this, were we outsourcing all of this?
We were working with contractors on parking lot maintenance.
Okay. And you think that's going to save, ultimately, though, we're going to do it in-house, and it's going to save us a lot of money?
Yes.
And then the, how many hours, I mean, what frequency? So if you get all this equipment in place, how many days is this stuff going to be out and use in the community out of the next year, do you estimate?
About
Fiscal year?
about 1 day per 3 weeks.
So all this stuff, it only gets used it's 1 day out of every 15 workdays?
That's for the streets, 1 day per 3 weeks, but for the parking lots,
Yeah.
those are dedicated projects. We're going to go through a major cycle of them. You can see on the CIP. So this year, in parking lots, ballpark, we'll have approximately almost 25 days or so of parking lots.
Actually, I did the math here real quick, and it's actually only 14 days out of 52 weeks that you'll be operating this equipment.
if we do 1 day per 3 weeks, that's for streets, but not parking lots. Yeah, you got to add parking. For the parking lots, I'm saying there's 25 days.
So it's going to save us money from outsourcing it, and is it going to significantly increase our coverage of of projects?
It'll
Different
increase the
projects?
quality of all of it. We have a hard time getting good quality slurry seals. It's difficult to spec. They throw it in and it's gone.
Are we going to have any outsourcing of any of the parking lots or anything else with this, or is there still going to be some to?
We'll still
In order to
consider
meet
that.
our,
We'll
you
still
know.
consider some of the striping of the parking lots.
I'd like to point out another comment we found is that my family's company is it's notorious, the fraud in the slurry seal spec. You think you're getting a certain solids.
They water it down.
They water it down, and
Junk.
it's really hard to catch them, and then you're in, so I'm just saying, we
They
can
say
get.
they're going to clean it. It's not clean enough. It's
Not-
peeling
oh,
up.
You know what I'm talking about.
They throw crack
It's
down.
a real problem with these
crappy
contracts.
rubber that heats up
Yeah.
and
But
I have one more question.
Go ahead.
Well, is there any, if we're going to have all this equipment, it's not going to get, I mean, I assume it could be utilized more, but that's the most we can do. Do we have any Is there any opportunities to outsource this equipment to any other agencies to get some of the capital expenditure back?
Certainly, if anybody's interested. And
Like the
we'll-
school system.
School district, the county, and
School
anybody
districts
else?
are always saying they can't barely keep up with any maintenance as it is. I doubt they'll, to sub our crew to
Well,
them and
Tom will charge
overtime.
them
or-
overtime, and we're
Okay,
happy
well-
to do it.
But when this is done, is this a single operator, or is this a crew that has to operate this stuff?
It's usually, for a crack filling, 2-man, sometimes 3. Actually,
So all
I'm
that
seeing
is
3. A lot of times
additional-
you have a blower, and then you got somebody blowing out the cracks, somebody filling them, and somebody
Okay,
driving
but
them.
all of this then requires a redeployment of your existing workforce that was being covered by the contractor with their equipment, right?
We didn't really do much of this stuff. We're doing pothole stuff with our own crew.
Well, I'm just wondering where the time they get to do it if they're shifting over to this.
I think Greg has been doing it in-house, but doing it poor quality due to the cold.
Okay, that's the answer.
Yeah.
Is
So
that the?
For the
Or you like
potholing-
that
For
answer?
the potholing, yes.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Potholing, yes. For the
We're
crack
making
filling,
more,
we're
we're
really
going
doing
to make
that.
better use of the existing hours.
Yes.
Okay, so the labor here is being used less efficiently or having poorer results. Okay, so
All right.
okay, get it. Thank you.
That makes more sense.
Okay, what else we got? We pretty much to the end of the,
I think that was it for vehicle.
We're
I
not
think
really
that's it.
replacing vehicles.
No, I noticed that some of the vehicles, the replacement estimate and the year of don't necessarily add up. Is that just because we're underusing those vehicles, or?
It should be just an addition of the year shown plus the estimated life. So 84.
I'm looking at the Ford Escape. It says
Yeah, the
10
estimated,
years in 2024.
the estimated lives were developed a few years ago and just kind of estimates. We find that a lot of our vehicles are not used, we're not beating them up, so, maybe the interior's cracking or getting bad or whatever, but they're still very functional as long as we're keeping them up with the maintenance.
We put extremely low mileage. These vehicles wear out from age, not mileage. I mean, our vehicles tend to put in 3,000 miles a year for most of the crew that uses them every day.
Well, and just make the comment we made before, because of that characteristic, as they start coming out with electric alternatives, they're going to make, at some point, we'll find a switchover point where it makes sense for low mileage to go with
There's an
electric
EV
drive.
collaborative that, I think it's called the Mayor's EV Collaborative that the mayor forwarded to us, and we ran a webinar with them last
We
week.
don't need range, in other words. We
Yeah,
could,
right.
we could get by with charges on electric vehicles. And electric vehicles don't deteriorate as much as internal combustion engines on low usage.
or take as much maintenance.
That's right.
The Ford's supposed to have a hybrid F-150 out in a year. They're talking about having an electric one in a couple, 3 years.
Yeah.
So that's possible. They don't like loads is the trick, right? They don't want to, most of our stuff is contractor beds on it, and they don't. But
Yeah, but I watch them go driving around. They're not usually heavily loaded.
Mayor, I have a
yeah,
question.
so maybe it'll work.
Okay, Randy,
Just regarding the electric equipment that we have purchased, how are the battery life holding up on these?
On the landscape equipment, great. In fact, we just went through a major weed eating cycle with them for the first time, and it's working out what we hoped for. Is 2 backpacks a day works. You're getting close to 4 hours, 3-4 hours on a battery backpack, 22-pound battery, right? And then you get 3-4 hours in the morning and 3-4 hours after lunch, and it works. So we've been working out well with the weed eating cycle.
And then we did bring up the fact that I'd personally like to see it, I'm sure Councilman Wyrick would too, is figure out how to transport these, our riding more, versus riding it on public streets, from park to park.
Yeah.
There's a way of transporting, it's a benefit.
It's not a street legal vehicle, but it's
We
being-
shouldn't be doing that. Maybe that was
Yes,
after
they
the
are.
demonstration or
No,
something?
Last week.
your guys are driving that mower, non-street legal. They're driving it on the street.
Because the Sarzati one should stay at Sarzati.
No.
I'll check into what you're talking
No, I
about.
saw him leave Sarasota and he goes to the park behind me. So I know where he's going.
is that?
Oh, up to Daly Park, huh?
Yeah,
Is that what they call it now, the White Oak
yes.
Circle?
Or we call it Daly Park.
Yeah,
Park.
okay.
The dog people have another.
But it's,
name.
you know,
That's true. Daly Park is fairly close, so they're probably saying, "Oh, is it worth going down, getting a trailer, rigging it up?" And
Yeah.
I usually leave those calls with them. But if you want me to check
What
into it,
what is the problem with it? Even, it may not be,
well, first of all, it's not a street legal vehicle. That's
You're
one.
putting a city employee in harm's way.
And then
okay,
number
from a
two, you're
safety
using up the
standpoint, yeah.
charge. going between jobs.
Is
I mean,
there
they have a 3-4 hour charge on them, so if it takes 10 minutes to get up
So
there.
you have a charging station at Sarasota, that's what I'm hearing?
Yes, that's where it's normally kept. So you must be talking about, yeah, they'll go to Daly Park once every couple of
Okay.
weeks. Yep.
Right.
I'll talk to them, and I guess, yeah, do we really want to force them to get the trailer out for it? It's kind of a headache.
Check with the insurance, right? What happens if, you know, there's an
What
accident on
happens to
a
the employee?
employee, if there's an accident with a non-street legal vehicle on the street?
Okay.
What's our insurance liability for that?
Doesn't make sense. It's
All right.
risk management.
I appreciate that comment. I'll check into it.
Okay, what else we got?
I understand, the last question for me, Mayor, is, are we in exchange, we're trying to do an exchange with our old diesel 72-inch riding mower with the city, with the school district?
Right. We've got.
So, great.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah. That was approved by APCD. I was a little concerned. But we haven't formalized it, but we've got it semi-formal. I need to.
Is there
send
any
them a
other
letter.
diesel inventory in the city at this point besides that?
I think we've got the backhoe is diesel, and then I think we've got everything else is gas, I think.
Because
yeah.
anything that is diesel, APCD is interested in. There's
Getting
always
rid of.
money available.
That's what the
If it's diesel, yeah. If
Yeah.
it's- If it's diesel, they got money for it.
Yeah.
If nothing else, they'll pay to upgrade stuff and things like that.
Even our loader, you know, our backhoe loader's super low hours and so on.
Your skid steers are diesel.
Actually, it doesn't matter the low hours.
Bobcat, is it? Okay.
APCD doesn't care about the low hours.
No, they will, I mean, if it's
Yeah, they
diesel,
don't.
they will essentially, I mean, for some stuff, it's like whatever it would cost to be new, they'll pay the difference from
Yeah.
repairing it to buying a brand new one that's not, that's.
No matter what
taken
the
care
hours.
of. And they have a credit card with John Deere's name on it and they love them a lot.
Okay. Okay.
We got California's supplying a lot of out-of-state diesel used markets.
That's true.
Someone's gotta do it.
It's a new business.
Or Mexico.
Okay, I guess we're done.
Okay, we done? Are we done here? Anything more to see? No, keep moving? Okay.
I think for us, the next question would be how council would like to proceed to the next step, whether we need to have another workshop or if we're ready to have it.
Well, how are we
a
gonna
public
handle,
hearing.
the big thing is how we're gonna handle the community requests. How are we gonna handle that?
And now we're gonna close the gap, if we're gonna close the gap. And then I had the Fire Safety Council, Chris Danch and
Yeah.
Mr. Castagna were here, and they're trying to figure out a way, I mean, it's much bigger than just us, but they want to know if we would even consider, being part of what they're trying to do. And I'm thinking, well, we'd certainly consider it. I said it goes to how much, for what, and who benefits. But if you can put a package together, and we don't have anything in effect, it's more than just matching for grants that they're talking about. It's sort of the idea of hardening the valley, but I don't think we can do that by ourselves. We're gonna have to do it in partnership with, the fire district and the county. But those are the kinds of things that, we may just have to address those. I'm thinking that we should all look at what we see is the gap. We come up with a strategy for how we're gonna start closing that gap, which I assume is gonna mean that some of the discretionary
Right.
allocations will be converted over for the mandatory expenses for the city. Try to ramp it down so nobody gets hit all at one time. And we distinguish between things that what could be considered investment, that is with a life of, say, 5 years or more, versus things that are just the light bill.
Right.
But we're gonna need to figure out how we're gonna do that.
You see the deficit being that $125,000?
I think it's gonna be, if it, forgetting about the deferred maintenance and the unfunded liability, just the operating expense, we're between 1 and 200, and maybe if we can split that and say we'll ramp down, we'll cut 50% and we'll look for economies of 50%, and the people who are thinking of themselves as being dependent upon us. I met also with Green Coalition this morning, that I said it may be just, a few dollars less, because the city's also investing in the green stuff,
Right.
and it's for the city, so, our budget for green is
Randy and I
going
are
to be
meeting with them tomorrow too.
a certain amount, but, maybe there's a way we can do it 50%, sort of a half-life approach, and then
Right.
within a couple of years, we'll maybe erase this, and if the Oaks gets renovated and reopened, we'll be back, you know,
Maybe the Playhouse too, get some.
yeah, and the
sales-
Playhouse.
Sales tax, yeah.
So,
But,
so what's our direction to council, or to staff?
well, how are we gonna handle the community requests? You know, that we usually have, they're always look for an opportunity to come make their case at a public hearing.
Well,
And
yeah, I
whether we
think
do
we
that or
listen
not.
to it. I think everybody gets, you know, to listen to it.
Yeah, so that
but
would be how are we gonna schedule that and handle that?
I would just soon handle that separate.
That's what I'm saying.
Have them come, make their requests, and then if we want to deal with that 50% factor, we do that night, and then it can just be turned.
Yeah, the question is, do we go through that hearing process or the request in a special meeting or as
in
part of a regular
workshop
meeting?
As
or-
opposed to, yeah.
Yeah, how do we handle, how do we
Well,
wanna handle
that
that?
sounds like, you know, at least a couple of you, I don't disagree.
Maybe have a workshop for the
Can
community
we, you know,
request?
have maybe a shorter one and let them present their
Yeah.
case. In some cases, they may be trimming their own.
Right.
In other cases, I know that there's a hope that they can get more, but I don't see any giving more in the cards. James, you did put in the budget, sort of what the council in the past had done. There just isn't any additional money. So the
Right.
question is, are we gonna hold that there, or are we gonna trim it and balance the or
I-
part of the budget, or are we going to let?
Maybe a short special meeting for the community request would be in order, so we don't
Yeah.
mess with the regular meeting?
Yeah, I think that's fine with me. How about you?
Yeah.
You're not, I'm sure, anxious
You know
for
what's
more
nice about
meetings.
this too, there's a little more give and take in this environment versus at a council session.
Well, in a public
cut and dry
hearing, yeah.
council.
More back and forth,
By
yeah.
the time we get to the public hearing, everybody should have pretty clear in
Right.
their mind what kind of motions they want to make, and then we adopt. Hopefully
Let's
there
schedule
will-
one more special meeting for community requests.
Okay.
you know.
Okay,
We-
so what's a good time for us?
When are we are we finalizing this at a regular council meeting?
Yeah,
Yes.
And do we know exactly what date that is?
well, it's like, what, the
So our-
second week in June?
Well, the end
was
of the fiscal year is
original
June
thought.
30.
I know that.
So our-
Is it the second meeting in June or the first meeting?
Yeah.
Our
The
goal
first.
was, we actually, I think, have a
The
slide
first
on that.
meeting in June.
Our goal is June 12th, but the other
Budget
option would
adoption
be
is
June 24th.
Fourth.
Yeah, I'm off
Okay,
by a
so
day up there.
Why don't
And
we
why don't we have the June 4th budget workshop be
Why don't we do
the
next
community
And that's
request?
what I was gonna
wanna
suggest.
do
too.
that, or you wanna do it next week, next Thursday? It'd be two council.
That's
So we
just,
do the third, so the first.
we got it June 4th already on the
Thursday,
calendar.
then let's do it.
We were gonna pull council for June 4th if,
Okay, let's do that.
Let's do June 4th for community requests.
Good.
Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
Well, it's up to the
I
other guys.
can't do June 4th.
Oh.
okay.
Oh, yeah, well,
We could do
I could-
the,
You guys keep making them on Tuesdays. It's awful.
Okay, well, let's do another time.
we can pull council for that during that week.
Yeah, Gail will do a good job of polling us.
Thursday, I can't do Thursday that week either. So.
Well, let Gail handle
Problem is, I
it.
have air pollution that day.
how's Wednesday the 5th?
And Wednesday, I don't.
I was trying to
want
think of
right?
if there was planning commission that day.
Oh.
I can pull up their calendar quickly.
Well,
We could go just before them.
And you can't do the 6th?
That's true.
So maybe we're
I
coming
can
back
barely
to
do the 5th. I
to
can do
this
the
one.
3rd.
I'm,
I can do Monday the 3rd.
I'm out, I got a governor's thing, well, maybe I should ask you guys about that, we've reserved a room, but the governor has called all the mayors in California to a wildland fire suppression issue, and,
Wow.
I was not going to attend, but then I thought that would look,
It'd look kinda-
that'd be poor form considering we, for a while, held the
had one of
record
those.
for the worst
Yeah.
fire in California, so I think.
We weren't
you
the
know,
only city involved in that one. In fact, we're the ones who got by pretty well out of the
You
rest
what?
of the city. We did pretty well compared to the other cities.
No, I know, but if Santa Rosa shows up,
Right.
Malibu shows up, you know,
I
what's
think it'd be
the
just for you to-
Paradise, and we're.
It
and
might be very useful for you to compare notes with the other mayors, you know, I mean.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking out of respect and in the hopes that the state
agree.
will continue to
so
remember,
you
we
rather that
need,
you reserve this room for?
anyway, that's the reason why on the 3rd and 4th I would be
Is planning
tied up,
commission
but
meet on the
I'm-
4th?
I can come the week
Commission meets
before
on the
or later in
5th
that
at
week.
6, so we could have done 4 to 6.
We got,
You want to do
Let's do 4 to 6.
4 to 6?
Is Ryan, are you available
When?
that day on the 5th?
No. Oh, on the 5th?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Wednesday
I
the
can-
5th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I
And
think
have
we
a
could do
deadline
4.
to be out of here by 5:45.
It's nice to be self-limiting.
okay, yeah.
And so we're gonna do the
I like
community organizations that
Like
day.
the 7 o'clock one tonight.
Yeah.
Community
We'll
request.
do the community requests and then, are we,
Yeah, we're gonna put it on
Guys.
comp time for you.
Hey, guys, we need to listen to the city manager.
sorry, so we're gonna do the community request that day, and then I guess the other question is, do you want staff to come back with recommendations on things to close the gap at this point?
Well,
Or is that going to be part of our
well,
discussion?
technically, we should listen to the community requests and then get
Okay,
that.
okay. So we'll just kind of have all those items listed out and we can
Yeah,
adjust.
we'll listen to
Yeah,
the
well,
requests.
yeah,
as we
we're
have
gonna be
time.
listening to it, but that may just mean we select more of the choices they're gonna give us in
Right.
order to
That's
make
true.
room for whatever the community
We
has.
could provide some information on what we know the requests are and what groups there are, and then we can adjust from there.
So I'm clear. So we're gonna do the community requests that day from 4 to 6, right?
4 to 6.
It doesn't have to be that early. I mean, because
TC's at 6.
oh, because planning commission. Okay. And then so we'll take all that information. There's not going to be any private deliberation, but then we will use the next council meeting to deliberate on all the budgeting issues across the board and approve the final budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
The,
And since that has to be done at a public hearing, we'll post notice this week for the June 12th meeting.
and then the question is, you're gonna contact all of the existing, community members. Are we gonna post a notice anywhere in the Ojai Valley News regarding, I know we don't want more coming, but I don't want someone saying, you didn't tell me, or I would've came and requested some funding.
We do make the budget workshop, obviously per the Brown Act, the budget workshop agendas are publicly available. We send the agendas out through Constant Contact to everybody.
Let's just
So
do that.
if that
Yeah.
works.
Because
I don't think we need to
we're not
advertise in the paper.
soliciting applications for grants, which
Yeah,
could be interpreted as such. That just makes your
Yeah,
job tougher, so, okay.
But we
so-
will
everybody
we'll
who
contact the
usually knows
existing ones.
knows.
They know.
I've never heard anybody not here, and I mean, there's organizations I know I'm going to make a call and make sure they know.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
So
so,
they're prepared when they come.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a 2-hour work session on the 5th from 4 to 6, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, if there's no further business, we're done. Thank you, guys.
I have a long email that I was
Guilty.
drafting.
And I'll make a note that you get a half hour.
I didn't even hear it. I didn't hear it, Greg.
Well, yes and no,
Didn't-
because
Yeah, oh, yeah, okay.
that's not how it
We'll
works.
round up.
What's 0 times 1.5?
What dinosaur operates a laptop?
Yeah, because of what was being told.
I've been called worse. No, but you're good. I made sure I put my contention badge and budget in my truck. I left it there. I wanted to just have a good
Are
discussion.
you representing or are you mediating?
No, neither. I was.
No, I mean, if he had gone in and say, this is what we're doing, so we have better sidewalks, and emphasize we're not taking away parking. But he wasn't
You know the
saying
vendors?
that. He says we're putting in a planter bed and taking away parking, that's what he was telling me.